Hey guys. This is part 4 of What If Naruto Was Azula's Bodyguard. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 9, Bridge and Old Friends. Location, Earth Kingdom. It had been nearly 3 weeks since Aang started earthbending training. Since then, they'd kept moving so Azula and Naruto wouldn't find them. So far, they had been lucky and had no encounters. Hey, look down there. Saka pointed downwards, seeing something. Everyone looked down, and saw that they were passing over an Earth Kingdom military camp. It looks like someone is trying to flag us down. A soldier was waving his arms, probably to get their attention. What should we do? Katara asked. She looked over to Team Guy. Should we land? She knew that they had to keep moving, but somebody wanted their help. She could never just walk past when someone wanted her help. At the very least, we can see what they want, Aang said, like he was trying to convince them. Personally, the air nomad always wanted to meet new people, even more so if they needed his help. It is your decision to land or not, Aang, Guy told him. They were not in command of the group. They were just there to make sure they stayed safe. In that case, please land, Toph said. I'd like to feel Earth beneath my feet again. She was used to flying on Appa, but prolonged flights made her want to start feeling solid Earth again. And at this point in the flight, she was willing to jump off of Appa to feel land. Alright then. Aang had Appa fly down to the ground. They landed just outside the military base, getting the attention of all the soldiers in sight. Almost immediately, a soldier came running out of the gate. You're the Avatar, right? He asked breathlessly, like he had run from the other end of the base. Do you not see the giant sky bison? Saka asked him. His own style of sarcasm was in full use. But that earned him a small scowl from his sister. Come with me, he told them, ignoring the barbed question. The colonel will want to see you ASAP. He walked back into the base and everyone followed. We haven't seen the Avatar in quite some time, Naruto noted. It had been a couple of weeks since that little incident in Tuzin, and they haven't seen or heard a single sighting of the Air Nomads group. Maybe he wised up and is evading us? Mai suggested. It seemed like the logical reason to her. The kid had to wise up at some point, right? Azula shook her head. Unlike her friend, she didn't believe that. He wouldn't come with the idea himself, he's too naive. One of the others must have come up with the idea. He began to list them. If it was my guess, I'd say it would be Saka or the group who came after you in the forest? Asked Ty Lee, cutting him off and looking intently at him. When he saw that Mai and Azula had joined her in looking at him, he simply nodded. Naruto, you can trust us. Who are these people? Azula asked him. She wanted to know so she could help him. He looked away so he didn't have to look at their eyes. I knew them once, a while back. That's all I'm going to say, he told them, keeping his eyes focused on the wall of the car. Still feeling their eyes on him, he turned and walked away. I'm going to check in with the engineers. As she watched him disappear, she was reminded of the last time that happened. Flashback. The boat was docked in the harbor and everyone disembarked. Zuko noticed that both Iroh and Naruto were heading in a different direction. Uncle, aren't you coming with us? He asked. He thought they were all heading to the royal palace. Iroh shook his head. No, Naruto and I must go somewhere. The blonde got him alone on the ship and asked him something. It might be a bit dodgy, but if he talked to the right people, it shouldn't be a problem. Where? Asked Ty Lee. I've decided to join the Fire Nation army, Naruto said before Iroh could even open his mouth. They just stared at him in disbelief, not believing what he had said. You! Snorted Azula. Why would they take you? I think you of all people would know why they would take me, he fired back. Instantly, she remembered that night on Ember Island and fell silent, seeing his point. But you're our age, Zuko protested. The army won't take you, and besides, why waste your childhood on becoming a soldier so early? They had rules about that stuff. I think they'll be able to make an exception this time, Iroh said. He would help him join. It was the least he could do for the blonde. After all, he saved his niece and nephew. Naruto walked over to where Zuko and Azula stood. For what it's worth, it was fun being with you guys on Ember Island. He gave them a hug, surprising them both. Before they could even protest or, in Azula's case, demanded why he did that, he and Iroh left. "Hey, Fox!" he called out as they walked away. "What do you want, kid?" the QB replied, bored. He had been bored since they had left Ember Island and was about to take it out on his Jinchuriki. There's only so many naps you can take. "Do you know anything about the shinobi arts? Do you not know how long I've been around?" he asked, completely offended by the blonde's words. "No, because the last time I asked how old you were, you got all huffy and acted like an old woman." "No, I didn't. But to answer your question, yes, I do know about the shinobi arts. I know a lot about the shinobi arts." "Why?" "I want you to teach me to be a better shinobi. I'm going into a war and I need to be the best. Kami, I need to better than the best." If he wasn't, there was a good chance he would die. And if he went, so did the fox. The Biju thought it over and immediately came to the same conclusion. "Alright, then I'll teach you what I know. I just have one thing to mention." "What's that?" For some reason, he had an immense sense of dread. And even though he couldn't see it, he knew that the damned fox had a very evil grin on his face. "Gaki, you are going to feel my own personal brand of hell." End flashback. "Hey Azula, what are you thinking about?" Ty Lee asked, noticing that her friend was staring into space. She had never seen her do something like that before. She came back to reality when she heard the acrobat's voice. "Nothing," she said. Before either of her friends could speak, Naruto came back into the car. "We may have a problem," he announced, sounding slightly worried. "Greetings, young avatar," the colonel in charge of the base said. "I am Colonel Chen." The man was sitting at his desk, which looked like was overflowing with papers. "Hello," Aang replied as they walked into the colonel's office, a room that was big enough for a desk and several people able to stand before it. "What do you need my help with?" Straight to the point," he said, standing up from his desk. "Tell me, Avatar, what do you know of the Fire Nation colonies?" He walked over to a nearby map hanging on the wall. Not much," the air nomad answered, a little embarrassed. It was funny. Half of the reason he was trying to stop the Fire Lord was because the colonies do not belong in the Earth Kingdom, but he didn't really know about them. The colonel looked briefly irritated, but it passed. "There are 3 colonies that are the lifeline of the Fire Nation here in the Earth Kingdom. They are Yudao, Akawan and Kozan." He pointed out the locations of the colonies on the map for them to see. Yudao is the manufacturer and Akawan is the harbor. But Kozan is arguably their most vital one. "Why?" Katara asked him. Guy was the one who answered her question. "It's where most of their resources come from, isn't it?" he asked the colonel. Chen nodded. "Yes. Kozan sits on top on what seems to be an almost endless amount of metal ore," he told them. "They mine the ore and send it to Yudao who, once they're done with it, sends it to Akawan so that it reaches the Fire Nation. For quite some time now, the Earth Kingdom army has been trying to disrupt the trade routes between the 3 colonies, but has had little success. I believe we should go directly to the source." "What do you mean?" Niji asked him. "I intend to go to Kozan and convince the Fire Nation colonists to leave. After which, Kozan will be held by the Earth Kingdom and the Fire Nation will lose an important colony. I believe with your help, Avatar, we can take over the colony much more smoothly," he explained. Saka didn't know why, but for some reason, what the colonel said sounded off to him. "Alright, I'll help," Aang said without hesitation, a big smile on his face. If the colonists left peacefully, he would gladly help. "Excuse us," Saka said to the colonel before looking at his friend. "Aang, can we have a moment in private, please?" The air nomad nodded. The 2 of them, as well as the rest of the group, left the colonel's office. As they walked down the hall, the tribesman saw an empty room. He quickly entered it, and everyone else followed. "What's up, Saka?" Aang asked him once they were in the room and the door was closed. "I think we should move on," he began immediately. "Something doesn't feel right about what the colonel said." "By the spirits, Saka, stop being so paranoid," Katara told her brother, her voice full of exasperation. She was beginning to get annoyed whenever he got like this. He usually would be wrong anyways. So why would he bother? There is nothing wrong with the colonel. "Yeah, we're just going to help him remove the colonists. That's all," Aang agreed with a smile. "It'll be completely peaceful. Come on, we have to tell him that we'll help." He left the room and the others followed, leaving Saka and Akela alone. "This is going to come back and bite us in the rear." I just know it, the tribesman told the wolf, who seemed to nod in agreement. What's the problem? Mai asked, acting like she wasn't concerned. The thing sounded like it was running fine to her. According to what the engineers told me, the wheels and the tracks are getting rusty, and they don't have enough of the oil needed to clean them. And we're also low on supplies, Naruto explained. If we don't find a place to fix all this, we'll be stuck. But apparently, we're an hour away from Kozan. Then that's where we're going, Azula declared. He nodded and went to tell the engineers to head for Kozan. An hour later, the tank train came upon the colony. It was located next to a cliff that dropped into a very deep and awfully long gorge. But what attracted a person's attention if they were to look at Kozan at a distance was the large bridge that had been built across the gorge. It was a beautiful fusion of Fire Nation engineering and Earth Kingdom craftsmanship. You'll have to excuse me, Azula, Naruto said as they walked into the colony, leaving the tank train outside the walls. But I have to check on some things. He looked over to the other girls. Mai, Tai Li, keep her out of trouble. And with that, he simply vanished. Since they were used to that, they weren't surprised. They just started walking down the street away from the gate. They made their way through the flow of people, staying within sight of one another. As they walked, the buildings gradually changed, becoming better maintained and built, showing that they were getting deeper into the colony. When they found the mayor's house, they went inside and made their presence known to the mayor. It is a great honor to have you in my house, Princess Azula, he told her, bowing. May I ask why you have decided to come to Kozan? We are tracking the Avatar, but we have run short of supplies and need to restock, she told him, sitting in his chair, the perfect picture of a Fire Nation princess. Once that is done, we will leave across the bridge. Once they were on the other side of the gorge, they could move more easily. The mayor winced. I'm afraid that is currently impossible, Your Highness, he told her, sounding embarrassed. The bridge was collapsed a few months ago by enemy earthbenders. It's currently under reconstruction. Then I'll go talk to the builder. She stood up from the chair and walked out of the room with Mai and Tai Li right behind her. They headed back into the streets. At the brisk pace they walked at, they soon arrived at the bridge. Who is in charge here? The princess demanded, looking at the construction that was going on. Who's asking? A nearby burly worker asked, looking up from what he was doing. The princess of the Fire Nation, she told him. Now where's the builder? The worker turned his head to where a young teenager and an adult were talking. Hey boss! He called out. Somebody wants to talk to you. Both the teenager and the adult turned their head to the worker. To the girl's surprise, it was the teenager who came over, not the adult. Who needs to talk to me? He asked. Who are you? Tai Li asked in a bewildered voice. My name is Inari. I'm the bridge builder here. He looked at the three girls. What exactly do you need? You're the bridge builder? Azula asked in disbelief. You're a kid. He was shorter than they were. Not by much, but he was still shorter. He looked at her straight in the eye. I'll admit that this is my first solo job, but I'd like to think I'm doing a good job. Now, what do you need? She regained her composure. It would not do for a princess of the Fire Nation to lose it over something like a bridge builder be younger than her. How long will it be until construction of the bridge is done? He looked back at the bridge and gave it some thought. It'll be about 2 days until we're done, he finally told her. That's impossible. You have a day to finish the bridge, she commanded, expecting him to salute and to bark orders to the workers. He didn't. Did you just tell me what to do about my work? He asked, like he didn't hear her right. Yes. He looked her straight in the eye. Look, lady, he said. The bridge will be done when it's done, no sooner or later. So don't start telling me how long I have to finish it. He stood defiantly in front of her. Do you not know who I am? She asked him, completely outraged. I am the princess of the Fire Nation. And you're currently standing on the bridge I'm working on, so that means I'm in charge, he fired back. If you don't have anything to say or do, get off my bridge. Noticing something out of the corner of his eye, he turned to see all the workers looking at their scene. Get back to work, he ordered, which they promptly did. Why, you little, she was about to set his hair on fire as a warning not to disagree with her when the end of a wooden staff appeared in front of her face, blocking her whole vision. Lady, I would appreciate it if you didn't attack the bridge builder, a voice told her. Looking around the end of the staff, she saw a slightly older boy with brown hair, a green jacket, a long blue scarf, and the same headband the people from Omashu and Tuzin wore. Mai and Tai Li would have reacted had they not felt the point of a blade in their backs. It would probably be best if you ladies left, a boy wearing glasses and had a small drip of snot hang from his nose said from behind Tai Li. We really don't want to cause an incident, a girl with 2 large orange pigtails spoke from behind Mai. The tension was thick until Azula surprised them all. Very well, we will leave, she announced before turning back to Inari. I apologize for my rudeness. You are correct, this is your bridge and I have no business interfering with how it's built. She turned around and left with Tai Li and Mai right behind her. Once they were a safe distance from the bridge, Tai Li opened her mouth. Okay, Azula, she began. What was that? There is no way you would have let somebody challenging your authority slide. I let it slide for a reason, she replied. You too saw the headbands. If I had caused a scene, Naruto would have found out, and when he did, he would have us leave and abandon the hunting of the Avatar. Also, there's a chance that group will find him and will want to fight him. So, if we keep quiet about the group while with Naruto and make sure that he doesn't meet the group, we'll be fine. Both Mai and Tai Li just stared at her for a minute, and then looked at each other. Did she just give a valid reason for backing off when someone challenged her authority? Tai Li asked, like it was something they couldn't believe. Yes. Yes, she did, Mai answered. I did not back off. Azula growled. Yes, you did, Tai Li said in a sing-song voice, grinning widely at her friend. Azula snarled. It was stuff like this that reminded her of when Naruto had just become her bodyguard. Flashback, she walked back to her room after her fire-bending lesson. It was a grueling one, so she was tired. She entered her room, ready to take a nap. But a small wooden ball flew out of nowhere and thwacked her on the head. Ow! What in Agni's name? She yelped as another ball hit her on the head. Who's throwing those? She received no answer, only another ball hitting her in the head. She kept looking around. The balls never came from the same direction, but she didn't know where the person who was throwing them was. Finally, another ball flew at her. This time, she dodged it by ducking. However, it didn't really work as another ball came at her and hit on the forehead, making her fall to the floor completely. Lesson number 1. Just because they're coming at you in one way, doesn't mean they won't come at you in another, a voice spoke from somewhere in her room. She looked up to see someone that was both familiar and yet unfamiliar to her. Naruto, you? She growled. What are you doing? She tried to discreetly look for him, but she couldn't see him. Trying to teach you a lesson, he replied. I don't know if it's working or not yet. Why are you here? She demanded, still trying to find him. I'm here because I am your bodyguard, he said, making her remember the week before. How she fought against 12 opponents in an Agni Kai and lost to the one person who wasn't a firebender. If that's so, then where have you been? She asked, keeping low to the floor. Observing you from a distance, he told her. To see if you have changed in any way. What do you mean, change? Let me put it to you this way. Would you still try and kill me if I was using your closet to hide from a rabid horde of girls? It was an innocent-sounding question, but she just knew there was a smirk on his face when he said it. Yes, she answered, standing up and lunging at the spot where she thought Naruto was hiding. Her hands grasped nothing, and had she not stopped herself, she would have hit the wall. Lesson number 2. Just because you can hear someone, doesn't mean they're there, his voice spoke from the other side of the room. He sighed. This might take some time. End flashback. Never thought I would get used to Naruto's lessons, Azula thought to herself as she and the other 2 girls walked through the colony. But she did in the end. And she was glad for it. Hey, Mai spoke up, let's stop somewhere and get something to eat. She had just realized that it was around midday, a fact her stomach was reminding her pointedly. Ooh! Tai Li exclaimed. That restaurant over there looks good. She pointed to said restaurant. They went into the restaurant, sat down at available seat, and placed their orders, which were quickly delivered. As they ate, they listened to what other people were saying. It was one such conversation that got Azula's attention. Did you hear what happened at Koan? Prince Zuko himself showed up and led the defenses. A girl at a nearby table said excitedly. I heard that on the first day, he pushed the enemy out of the city by himself, another girl said. From what I heard, when he met with the 41st Division, he got on his knees and begged them to forgive him. They were so moved that they put him in command, third commented. Fighting off a besieging army for days on end and then turning the tables by attacking the enemy forces and winning? Prince Zuko is so cool, one of them squealed. I was told that he found a dragon that was held captive by the enemy. He released it and then set it free, telling it to find him when they were both stronger. The leader of the Yuan archers was so moved by his actions that he immediately gave Prince Zuko the title of dragon. Yeah, I was told the same thing. Prince Zuko was to be known as the Scarred Dragon. It was then all the girls at the table, the ones who just listened as well, chorused, Prince Zuko is so cool. As she listened on, Azula's expression got more and more murderous. We're leaving, she suddenly declared, standing up from their table. She was out of the restaurant before Ty Lee and Mai could even get up from the table. She walked away with an angry pace until she felt a hand on her shoulder. Whipping her head around to demand who touched her, she found it was Naruto. Azula, what's the matter? He asked her, concerned. When she was this mad, it was best to find out why fast. She's upset because she heard people talking positively about Zuko, Mai told him as she and Ty Lee caught up with the two. Meanwhile you're ecstatic about it, aren't you, doom and gloom? She didn't reply, but there was a faint, very faint, smirk on her face. She might not have been ecstatic, but she was pleased. Why are they talking about him like he's a hero? He's a traitor to the Fire Nation. Why does he get the title of dragon? Azula demanded, annoyed and irritated. If anyone should have gotten the title of dragon, it should have been her or her father. Because when he goes to fight the dragon, the only way he'll come back alive is if he defeats the dragon. That's the kind of drive Zuko has, Naruto stated. He might be in exile, but that was exactly the kind of drive the Prince of the Fire Nation had. Azula, why do you dislike listening to what happened at Akawan? Is it because of the fact Zuko might not have been as useless as you thought? That was the truth, but she wasn't willing to admit it. It's not important anymore, she said, brushing it off with a shrug. By the way, Naruto, I want you to stay away from the bridge and the mayor's house. She told him, changing the subject before anyone could argue the fact. He was confused by those words. Why? I think some of the servants at the mayor's house and the workers at the bridge are fangirls of yours. She lied with a straight face. So if they see you. She left it hanging. He quickly got what she was talking about. We might potentially have another great chase on our hands which could possibly level the colony, and or destroy the bridge they're rebuilding? She nodded in acknowledgement. Suddenly, Naruto spotted what appeared to be one of the hawks that were normally used by Fire Nation officers. When it landed close to his arm, Naruto grabbed its message. After reading its contents, he exhaled and turned to Azula and her friends. I'll keep an eye on you three after I am finished with something important. Azula glared at him again. What? I'm not going after the group that is accompanying the Avatar. If anything, Koan is getting additional help. Additional help? Mai asked curiously. Azula nodded in agreement. What kind of help exactly? The Earthbenders are not going to attack an incomplete bridge at any moment. Let's just say that Koan is going to receive some unpleasant visitors. Plus, I have a meeting with Governor Shun as well. Azula and her friends nodded in agreement. Let the mayor know that he is also invited to the meeting with the governor as well. Will do, Naruto. As Naruto stepped into a nearby alley and was lost to their sight, Ty Lee leaned in close to Azula's ear. That was a nice lie you came up with, Azula, she whispered. It wasn't exactly a lie. Azula whispered back. Naruto watched them walk down the street against the ledge of a house. Are you going to tell them why you up at night when the messenger hawk arrived? The QB asked him as they disappeared. Or why you were up the next night as well? No, I won't, he told the fox as he moved to keep track of them. It's not their concern. Kit, you need to talk to someone about it. It's not healthy to keep it bottled up like this. I talk to you, don't I? He retorted. Besides, compared to me, Azula's issues are much more imposing. Funny. To me, both of your issues are on par with each other, the fox remarked drily. The dedication of his Jinchuriki would have been touching, if it was a different time. But it wasn't, and therefore, his dedication wasn't touching. Enough, what has happened, happened. There's nothing I can do to change it. But what if you could? The QB wondered aloud. What if you could change what had happened? Would you do it? Would you leave Azula to go save him? Why are you asking me these questions, QB? I asked them because we share the same pain. Despite the fact that we didn't really like each other, the Akatsuki took my brother from us. When you say us, do you the Biju or the Jinchuriki? Both, the fox told him solemnly. He stopped talking to the fox and focused on watching Azula. He didn't want to talk about or remember the nightmare that he dreamt. He didn't want to remember how he watched as the Akatsuki had captured and killed Gaara by extracting Shikaka from him. It'll take us about 2 days to reach the bridge that connects the two sides of the gorge, Chen told the Avatar's group as he pointed it out on the map in his office. By the time we arrive, however, we should reach the bridge just as it's finished. Does the colony have a military force? Guy asked. Odds are there were, but he had to be sure. Yes. But most have been put to work repairing the bridge. They will be tired and will be slow to respond. We can capture most of the soldiers on the bridge and force the colony into surrender. What do you mean by capture exactly? Saka asked. Every time the colonel talked, his sense of unease grew. The colonel wasn't going to do what he said, the tribesmen just knew it. Just exactly that, he said, looking at Saka. I plan to capture them. Why don't I believe you? His sister shot him a look of annoyance, trying to silently tell him to stop. He had no plan on doing that. Saka, if you're going to be like that, perhaps it would be best if you left, Aang told him, flashing a quick apologetic grin at the colonel. Saka simply headed for the door and walked out it. The hallways and corridors were silently as he walked. He soon walked out into the open and saw that Appa and Akela were near. He went over to them, sat himself down against Appa's leg, and waited. He didn't have to wait long. What has you acting so unyouthful, Saka? Lee asked him as the Konoha shinobi and everyone else arrived. I don't trust that guy, he replied, looking up at them all. He rubs me the wrong way. Saka, will you let it rest? Katara asked. She was very annoyed with how he was acting. The colonel is not a bad guy. He's loyal to the Earth Kingdom, and his troops love him. Guys, Aang said, trying to make sure things didn't escalate between the siblings. Let's just leave Saka alone for now. If we give him some time to calm down, maybe he and the colonel will be able to get along. He believed. Really, he did. He just thought that Saka needed some more time to get used to Chen. The others in the group nodded in agreement and left Saka alone. Aang was the last one to leave, and he was the only who heard what Saka said to Akela. I'm not the one making the mistake here. The sun had yet risen, but there was still light enough in the sky for Azula to stand in front of a training dummy in the mayor's backyard. Normally, when she could, she would rise with the sun and practice her fire bending. But this time, she wanted to practice something different. She could still remember the first time she tried it. Or rather, the first time Naruto made her try it. Flashback, what exactly are we doing in the training yards at 3 in the morning? She demanded. Even though it wasn't winter, she still felt cold. She just wanted to go back and sleep a little longer, but Naruto deprived her of that when he had all but dragged her out of the bed. Lesson number 3, the blonde answered cryptically. What in Agni's name is lesson number 3? She was long past beginning to hate his lessons. She hated them with a passionate hatred that would have made her father proud. Just because you're good at one form of combat, doesn't mean you shouldn't try another, he told her. Your firebending is good, but you're a little weak when it comes to close combat. At that point, he pulled out 2 sheathed military daggers out of a nearby chest. Therefore, you will learn how to use daggers in close combat to make up for this weakness. She scoffed. What he suggested was completely ridiculous. I don't need to learn how to use these daggers, my firebending is all I need, she told him defiantly. Didn't you say the same thing before I pinned you to a tree? He asked with a straight face, making her remember that one day on Ember Island. Besides, you're not leaving this yard until I'm satisfied. And what's stopping me from leaving? She was sure she could take him in a fight. And if not, she was a good runner. The fact that the cooks will not serve you breakfast until I approve it. I won't stop you from leaving, but you'll just be hungry. Snarling at him for the prospect at the loss of food, she yanked the 2 daggers out of his hands. All right, fine, she muttered. She drew the daggers and held them in her hands, their handles feeling awkward and heavy. You're holding them wrong. Do you want to be a eunuch? She growled. She really didn't need his attitude at that moment, and would follow through with her promise. He snorted in derision and crossed his arms. Please, you couldn't even touch me with those. End flashback. She hated it at first, and she hated him for making her do it. But she eventually got used to it. She wasn't a master at it, but she could hold her own with the daggers. She held the daggers low in front of her and attacked the training dummy. Once she was done, she looked at where she had stabbed, sliced, and nicked the dummy. I'm rusty, she noted. Due to the fact she was chasing the Avatar, and her father had been keeping a closer eye on her, she didn't really have time to practice. She practiced the motions again and again until she was satisfied. She put the daggers away and noticed the sun was rising. She closed her eyes and began to breathe. Slowly she breathed in and out as the sun rose slowly on the horizon. Once she felt ready, she began to practice her fire bending. She started slowly, then began to get faster and faster until both the fire and she seemed to be two parts of an intricate dance. Finally, she finished the practice by again controlling her breathing. Once she was done, she walked back into the mayor's house. As she made her way to her room, she passed an open door and saw something that caught her eye. Standing on a rack against the wall stood a sword. But it was no ordinary sword. She knew a few swords that were as tall as a man, but they didn't have cutouts in them. This sword had two of them. One was a full circle near the tip of the blade, and the other was a semicircle near the handle. Handle from the handle by a strap was a mask with a red wavy design on the bottom and a symbol on the top. She walked into the room to examine the two things closer. "May I ask what exactly you're doing in my room?" a voice to her side said. If it hadn't been for her training in firebending and by Naruto, she would have leapt in surprise. She turned around and saw that it was Inari, dressed for the day. "I'm sorry," she apologized as she tried to think of an excuse. "My brother is a swordsman, so your sword caught my eye. I've never seen anything like it before. Most people on this side of the world haven't either," he told her as he walked up to the sword. She stepped out of the way and watched as he took the mask off the handle and laid it on the bed. Then she watched as he took the sword off the rack and held it. He held it for what seemed like a long time. In the end, he put it back on the rack and then hung the mask from the handle. Even though he wasn't breathing hard, she could see that he was sweating. "Is it heavy?" she asked. "It's taken me 3 years just to hold the thing without dropping it," he answered, wiping the sweat off. "Is it a family heirloom?" "No." He touched the blade gently, like he was remembering a memory. "It's more of a memento." "Who did it belong to then?" "There must have been a reason for him to keep it if it wasn't an heirloom." "A demon who died to defend my home." She would have asked more questions, but the 3 children from yesterday, as well as a man with dark shades, a green jacket of sorts, and a bandana with the same leaf symbol the kids had on their headbands, appeared at the door. "Hey Inari," the blue-scarfed one spoke up, only to trail off when he saw Azula. "You're that lady from yesterday?" He pointed at her with an accusing finger. "My name is Azula," she told him with a little annoyance. "Who are you?" "Huh?" He grew confused before realizing what she meant. "Oh right, we never told you our names." "Well, my name is Konoha-Maru. This is Udan." He pointed to the other boy who had the glasses. "This is Moegi." He pointed to the girl with the orange pigtails. "And this is our teacher, Ebisu." He pointed to the adult. "Good morning, ma'am," Ebisu said to Azula. "I'm sorry, but we must go now." "Don't let me stop you." As they left, she went back to her room. She took use of the nearby tub of water to wash and clean herself. She took some time as a bath was one of the few pleasures she let herself indulge in. Once she was done, she got out and changed into fresh clothing. That was when she heard a knock on the door. "Who is it?" she asked. The door opened and Tai Li and Mai came in. "Hey Azula!" chirped Tai Li, who sounded both happy and excited. "What are you planning to do today?" "I figured I'd get breakfast and then do some more practice. I need to work on my dagger techniques. I'm rusty," she told the acrobat. Being rusty was not something she would allow herself to be. "You can work on those later," her friend insisted. "Don't you realize what we have right now? We have a day off." Mai sighed at her antics. "Tai Li, we're not in school anymore." When they had been, she would start getting excited when the teachers said that they could have a day off. "A day off is a day off," she replied stubbornly. "Besides, I know the perfect thing to do today." "What's that?" Despite asking that question, the knife wielder already knew the answer. "We can go shopping." The room was silent for a few minutes until Azula broke the silence. "I'm getting food first," she said before walking out the door. If they were going shopping with Tai Li, it was best to put some food in her belly. "Don't forget that we are invited for dinner with Governor Shun." "Why?" Tai Li asked. "Because it is rare for Governor Shun to meet some important people from the homeland. Plus, I'm sure that he will explain to us as to why he requested extra help guarding the bridge." Both Mai and Tai Li grimaced before nodding reluctantly as they moved on. Is everyone on? Aang asked from where he sat on Appa's head, the dawn breaking all around them. The colonel's forces were getting ready to move and they had too as well. Everyone except Saka and Akela, Guy told him from the saddle. Where are they? It wasn't like them to not be around when it was time to go. He said that he was going to march with the soldiers. He said he was going to practice for when we didn't have Appa, Niji answered. That's ridiculous. When would we not have Appa? Katara asked. The sky bison was always there, alongside Aang. I asked him the same question. He told me that it's better to be safe than sorry. He shrugged his shoulders. It's a good reasoning. It was never a bad idea to improve yourself, and the tribesman was doing just that. If he wants to walk, let him. It's his choice. Aang told them. Appa, yip, he told his sky bison. Appa was up and in the air as the soldiers marched. Some of them aboard the sky bison tried to look over the side to see if they could find Saka, but they couldn't. He was lost in a sea of faces. By the time Naruto arrived at a wild ravine, as per the written instructions, he looked around but saw no one. Not wanting to be caught off guard, he placed his hand on his yen and paused. A swinging rope with a pair of balls attached to it swung by him. He dodged, only to land close to where a mysterious object landed and moved to the side as said mysterious object suddenly exploded. He spotted a large, bearded man wielding a guan dao charging towards him, forcing him to deflect his attack with his yen. Not long after he dodged the guan dao's strike, a flaming arrow flew towards him. He avoided one, only to have another come flying. He constantly dodged them until fatigue kicked in, allowing an unusual, bearded man to tackle him into the ground. The man with the guan dao aimed his blade into the blonde's throat as he struggled to free himself. Just as when he was about to give up, the bearded man grabbed him and made him stand up again, at the same time giving a large grin. That was an excellent sparring session, Lord Naruto, said Colonel Monk amusingly. Naruto was not amused. It was if you guys didn't try to kill me in the first place. But then again, that always how the rough rhinos trained, always going for the kill. He put his annoyance to the side and focused on what was important. I didn't know that you guys were going to be the extra backup that Governor Shun requested. Kachi nodded. After our failure to capture the Avatar, the Fire Lord saw another use for us. Governor Shun requested for extra reinforcements, and we were called up to help. However, from what Colonel Shina had said in a message that we received a few days ago, there is an advancing Earth Kingdom army closing in on Kozan. In that case, will Colonel Shina bring in the Yen archers then? Naruto asked as he sheathed his jien. Yes. Vatcher felt uneasy around Naruto, which the blonde noticed. However distasteful it is for me personally, the other Yen archers recognize your authority as the paragon of the Fire Nation. Naruto sighed. While he knew a bit about Vatcher's past as a former Yen archer, he did not divulge too deep into why he had ended up with the Rough Rhinos. Moreover, the Rough Rhinos were among the elite Fire Nation troops that did not interact directly with Naruto while the Fire Nation was on the march. Which meant that they developed their opinions on him from certain Fire Nation officers who did not like to take orders from a paragon who was technically supposed to be their subordinate. Still, Governor Shun's request was rather important to both Naruto and the Rough Rhinos. So they marched back to Kozan. Azula and her friends spent the day at the stores, browsing, trying things on and just having a good time. Even Mai got into it after a while, once they found the weapons store. Azula smiled. She couldn't really remember the last time she enjoyed herself with her friends. Training didn't really count. In the middle of the afternoon, they managed to find themselves a clothes store. They went into the store and began to look around. Hey Azula, what do you think of this? Ty Lee called out. She was holding a dress in front of her that was a blinding pink. Try finding something that isn't an eyesore, she stated. She couldn't look directly at the thing. She was half afraid that she would go blind. It is a little too pink, isn't it? The acrobat asked. That would be an understatement, Mai told her. She huffed. Fine, but I know what would look good on Azula. She put the pink dress back and reached for another one. What would that be? Azula asked, curious about what her friend might show her. This, she said as she showed the dress. When she saw what it was, she was shocked. Are you crazy? I am not wearing that. It's hardly even decent. She all but shouted at the acrobat. Okay then. Ty Lee walked over to the clerk. We'll take it. No, we are not. She tried to yank the dress out of her hands only to be held back. Oh, relax, Mai told her, holding her in place. It's for your own good. You could use a dress like that. She was fairly certain that the princess didn't even have a dress. Azula could only splutter as the dress was bought. You'll thank us later, Azula, Ty Lee told her as they walked out of the store, the dress safely packaged away. Probably when someone asks you out on a date, or you ask him. Naruto is not my boyfriend, Azula snapped. She was getting tired of them saying stuff like that. Both Mai and Ty Lee smirked. I never said Naruto or anything about a boyfriend, the acrobat said. She stifled a growl at her as she looked around. You know, I kinda wish he was here right now. I want to know what he thought of what we got. It was at that point a piece of paper floated down from the sky. Mai plucked it out of the air and looked at it. Read this, she told Ty Lee. She took the paper. Ty Lee, if I was actually with you three right now, the only way I would actually enter a store of my own violation was if your lives were at stake. Naruto, well, that's a little rude, she huffed. He makes it sound like we're going to torture him. Another piece of paper floated down from the sky. She grabbed it and looked at it. Asking me of what I think of this shirt, or these pants as you pose with them on, trying to get my honest opinion on some piece of lingerie or swimsuit, calling me a pervert if I accidentally ogle you. Do I need to go on? Naruto, he has you pegged, Mai told Ty Lee. What I want to know is how he's doing that, Azula said. A third piece came floating down, this time in front of her. She grabbed it and read it. Lesson number 4, Azula, lesson number 4. Naruto, of course, lesson number 4. Sorry about that, Naruto, she called out. A fourth piece of paper came down. Apology accepted. Naruto, hey Azula, Ty Lee said. What's lesson number 4? As if to answer her question, a fifth piece of paper came down from the sky. Azula caught it and read it to the other two. If you have to show people something, don't tell them how you did it. Naruto, well, I still wish he'd come out and join us, Ty Lee said with a pout. Do you not remember the last time he walked into a clothes store with us? Mai asked her. The three of them shuddered at the memory. He had picked out a shirt and gone to the back to try it on. But soon afterwards, a horde of his fangirls had showed and besieged his dressing room, trapping him in there. It took us 6 hours to get him out of there, Azula said. They had tried to get through to him, but they had kept getting pushed back. Despite how much she wanted to, the princess couldn't use her fire bending on them. It would have made an even bigger panic. But you have to admit, it was funny, Ty Lee replied with a small giggle. Just thinking about how the blonde had been trapped in that dressing room tempted her to laugh. It always surprises me how tolerant he is with the fangirls, even with the great chase and the countless other times they've gone after him, Mai told them. Despite all that has happened to him when they came for him, he was still polite to them, when they were in small numbers. Azula grew somber. He's not always so tolerant. You guys know what happened at Shurji as well as I do. They nodded gravely. What had happened at Shurji reminded them that Naruto wasn't just a nice if yet mischievous guy. He could be a dangerous person. They were silent for a minute. Let's go. We need to meet with the mayor before going to Governor Shun's mansion for dinner, she finally said. They nodded in agreement. Appa had flown all day, keeping in sight of Colonel Qing's army. When night had fallen and the army had made camp, they landed away from them to make their own camp. Once they had finished, they all sat around the fire, just relaxing and eating dinner. Saka and Akela are coming back, Toph suddenly announced, getting everyone's attention. Sure enough, Saka and Akela arrived. Hey guys, he greeted as he sat down, taking a bowl from Katara. So, Saka, how was marching with the troops? Niji asked him. Tiring, he answered, looking up from his bowl. After a while, you can't feel your feet. But at that point, your brain is on autopilot, so you just keep walking. His feet were coming back to normal, but he was being careful with them. It is still very youthful of you to have marched throughout the entire day, Lee told him with the utmost conviction. Indeed, Guy chimed in. It proves that you are still in the springtime of your youth. If you say so, I just feel tired. His attention went back to the bowl in his hands and began to eat. They all stared at him for a moment, waiting to see if he would say anything else. So, did you talk to any of the soldiers? Tenten finally asked him, breaking the silence. He looked up. Why are you asking? I'm just curious. Why else would he forego riding on Appa for the day? Even she could admit that it was slightly better and faster than running all day. Katara saw where the kunoichi was going with this, and immediately scowled at her brother. Saka, did you ask the soldiers about Colonel Chen? She demanded, cutting off Tenten's incoming question. Yeah, I did, her brother said, like nothing was wrong about what he had said or done. But her scowl deepened at his words. What did you ask them? Aang asked, trying to ensure that a fight didn't break out. Just basic ones, what they thought of the colonel, is he a good leader, that kind of stuff. He had asked those questions to a lot of soldiers, which had taken up the entire day. And what did they say? That he was probably the best leader they ever had, he was a good tactician, and he cares about them. There, do you see that the colonel is a good man? He knew that to be true, he saw when they had first met the colonel and talked to him. Saka shook his head. It seemed like they were too energetic to talk and defend the colonel. He would have thought that there would be a few who disagreed with Chen. But all of his men loved him fiercely. He just knew that there was something wrong. For LA's sake, Saka, give it a rest. Katara snapped. There is nothing wrong with the colonel. He's a good man who just wants the Fire Nation out of the Earth Kingdom. Why couldn't her brother see that? Did you know that he captured some of the colonists from Kozan? He asked. They were 2 colonists who were hunting with their sons? Yes, Chen told us that when we landed, Aang told him. He said that when we arrived at the colony, he will release them after he convinces the other colonists to leave. The airbender knew that the colonel would keep to his word. Right, after he convinces them to leave, the tribesman muttered. For some reason, whenever Chen used the word convince, he didn't mean what the others thought he meant. Unfortunately, his sister heard his mutter and decided to put her foot down. Saka, if you keep this up, I will have Appa take you back to the South Pole. That way you can act like a child there, she warned him. When he heard those words, he stood up from where he sat. Act like a child? He repeated, anger evident in his eyes. His bowl fell from his hands and hit the ground. Katara, just once, will you believe me? I don't know how, but the colonel is not what he seems. She wouldn't have of his nonsense. You're being paranoid and you're acting like a child, she told him, the fire making her eyes look seemingly harsher. Grow up. He stiffened at those words, looking like he was about to snarl at her. Then he looked around and saw that no one was on his side. He stifled the snarl that was coming up and walked away, Akela close behind him. What's up with him? Told fast as she felt the 2 of them leave the campsite. Katara sighed in exasperation. Honestly, it was a full-time dealing with Saka when he became paranoid. He gets like when things don't go his way, she told the earthbender. Give him some time, he'll calm down. Saka stomped through a nearby forest, not caring if he was causing a racket. Akela trotted behind him, staring silent. Stop acting like a child, he asked himself. I haven't been a child since Dad left. Ever since that day, I have tried to protect her and my friends. But does she thank me? No. She just ignores me whenever I have a bad feeling. He punched a tree. Arg, there are some days when I just to once slap my sister. He kept walking until he stopped outside a cave. Suddenly, he felt a jolt of pain in his leg. Looking down, he saw that Akela had bitten him in the leg. They were like that for minutes until Akela let go of his leg. He sighed, the anger inside of him draining away. Sorry about that, Akela. I was just so angry. Akela gave his arm a lick. Looking down at the wolf, he realized something. You've gotten big. Akela gave him a look that was a combination of no, really? What tipped you off? And it took you long enough. The wolf now reached his waist. There wasn't any trace of the starved, Sudanash-covered puppy he had rescued. Sorry, he apologized, realizing what the look meant. You know how things have been lately. He looked around and finally noticed the cave. It looked like an ordinary cave, but he felt like he should know what was in there, like he had to go in and go alone. Akela, I want you to stay outside this cave. I'm going in to see what in there. Akela flattened his ears, let his tail fall, and whined. I know. You don't want me to go in there, but I feel like I must, the tribesman told the wolf, kneeling and scratching him behind the ear. Don't worry, I'll come back. He set off into the cave, leaving Akela behind. As he went further and further in, he realized that it wasn't getting darker as it should have been. In fact, the light stayed the same. Looking around, he saw that torches were placed along the walls. They looked like they were recently put in, and yet, he somehow knew they were not. He also noticed that as he went deeper into the cave, it was looking less and less like a cave tunnel. Finally, he arrived at the end of the tunnel, which now looked like a corridor. In front of him stood a door, a wooden door that seemed to be unlatched. He reached for the door handle, and as soon as he touched it, the door swung open. Well, that's not creepy, he said to himself. Not creepy at all. He walked into the room. It was a tomb. The fact that there was a stone coffin in the room tipped him off. This coffin wasn't carved out of the rock and shaped it into a crude form. No, he would say that this was a coffin made of the highest quality of stone and was carved by the greatest stonemasons at the time it was created. It was made with both white and black marble. On top of the coffin lay 2 swords. The larger sword was the definition of oversized cleaver. It was big enough that the tribesman was quite sure that even if he used both of his hands to pick the sword up, he would have a hard time holding it. The blade's edge curved inward at the top. Along its back was a thin, hollowed-out part. The second sword was smaller and looked more like a knife than a sword, with a guard over the handle, most likely to protect it. At the bottom of the slab covering the coffin, near the tip of the sword, were 2 inscriptions. One was long and the other was short, but they were both of foreign writing, so he didn't know what they say. Suddenly the door behind him slammed shut, and all but one of the torches in the room went out. The one remaining torch burned so low that it only barely illuminated the room. Saka reached for his boomerang on reflex but stopped when he heard a rattling of coils. It's been a long time since someone has entered this tomb willingly, and walked into my claws, a voice whispered from the darkness in the room. Who is there? Saka called out as he slowly brought his hand away from the boomerang. He could hear something moving, but he couldn't see what it was. It seems that the Avatar didn't tell you about what happened to him at the North Pole. The voice sounded very amused. He stopped looking and froze. In truth, Aang did tell them what had happened at the North Pole during the siege. And he also told them how to survive if they ever encountered the spirit he did. And now that spirit was in the tomb, you are the face stealer, he announced to the room in an emotionless voice and with a neutral expression. The rustling of coils quickened, and he was suddenly staring at an arrogant male face from the Northern Water Tribe. He knew that face was from the Northern Water Tribe because he had, unfortunately, known the original owner of that face. He said neutrally. So that's what happened to Han. Oh? You know this face? Han's lips moved, but it wasn't his voice that was speaking. It was the spirit's voice, Ko's voice. Met him a while back, he was an ass, he said with a shrug, acting nonchalant. Ko chuckled sinisterly. Indeed, he was, and arrogant as well. He came into my territory and tried to challenge me. The face changed into a blue demon face, the lips surrounding blinking, and the face changed. One look at this and he screamed in fright. The sounds were so satisfying. He looked at Saka, who hadn't said a word in response. You will not avenge your friend? I never said that he was my friend. I said he was an ass. He looked at the coffin as Ko coiled around his body. So, whose tomb did I walk into? The spirit switched his face to one that was painted white and had gray eye markings with red lips. He uncoiled his body and scuttled over the ceiling to look at the coffin from above. The tomb of a interesting man, he finally said. Saka couldn't be sure, but he could have sworn there was a tiny amount of sadness in Ko's voice. How was he interesting to a spirit? The tribesman asked with genuine curiosity. That was something he didn't know could happen. Granted, his experience with spirits was rather limited. The face stealer, having heard the curiosity in his voice, turned around and rushed towards him, wearing the face of a blue-nosed baboon. But Saka still wore the emotionless face. Ko changed his face to that of an old man and began to chuckle. Very impressive, boy, but how long can you last? He crawled back to look at the coffin. This man lived a long time ago, yet lived for a long time. He came to me once and demanded that I show him the way into the physical world. I refused and he drew his blade. I found out 2 things that day. His blade could hurt spirits, and that I could not take his face. So did you kill him? The face changed again, this time into a brutal-looking man. On the contrary, I showed him how to enter the physical world. The face turned back into the white mask. And for many years afterwards he would come visit either when he wanted a fight or to talk. It seemed that he could walk either world with ease. Why would he talk to you? Why would anyone want to meet the face stealer more than once? He certainly didn't want to. Once was enough. I had asked him that myself once. He told me that it's better to trust an enemy that you know than an ally you don't. When it came time for his death, he called me here to the physical world and asked me to watch over his tomb from that day on. He trusted me to keep away and terrify those who would try to discredit his tomb. As his voice sounded sad. It almost sounded like he missed the person who was entombed. And do you know what that makes you? He asked as he turned to face Saka, once again wearing Han's face. That would make you a desecrator. Your face will soon belong to me. But I didn't desecrate anything, the tribesman objected. And you can't take a face that doesn't show emotion. The face changed again, this time into an owl. I have ways of making you express emotion, boy. I will enjoy making you scream. The spirit coiled up to launch himself at Saka. If you're going to kill me, may I ask a question? He asked, catching the face stealer off guard. What would that be? He pointed to the inscriptions on the coffin. Do you know what those words mean? He wanted to know what they said. Yes, I do. But you don't need to worry about them now. The spirit lunged at the water tribe paragon when all the torches suddenly flared back to life, making Saka cover his eyes and Ko to coil back with a hiss. Ko, a different voice, one Saka knew well, spoke. Did you forget what I told you the last time you tried to take one of my paragon's faces? He opened his eyes and saw Sifu standing, or rather, floating, over a cowering Ko. Sifu! Squeaked Ko, wearing the face of a child. It was probably to make Sifu think he wasn't dangerous. We were just talking. That's all, I swear. Ko, if you're not gone in the next 5 seconds. Ko heard the warning in Sifu's voice. He hurled himself at the darkest corner in the room. Saka didn't hear the sound of anything hitting the wall, so Ko must have fled back to the spirit world. There are days when I wonder why I let him exist, Sifu said, annoyed. He looked at the coffin. So you found him. Who is he? Do you know him? Saka asked him. It seemed like everyone knew the man in the coffin, everyone except him that. Not at first. You know I was the last teacher of the first paragons? The tribesman nodded. Well, he taught them before I did. When I first met them, they were carrying swords that felt like they came from the spirit world. Once they learned everything that I could teach them, I asked them where the swords had come from. They told me that they learned from a lost swordsman. I spent quite some time looking for that swordsman after that. He was difficult to track down. Ko said that he could move through either world easily, he commented. Which is probably why it was taking me so long to find him, he admitted. By the time I found him, the first paragons had already trained their successors and retired. And I found that he could do travel between the two worlds because he was essentially half dead. Saka was confused by that. How can he be half dead? There was either alive or dead. There was no middle ground. Don't know, I thought it was better not to push it. I asked him what kind of sword the first paragons carried. He told me that they weren't just swords, they were zanpakutos. Zanpakuto? Repeated the tribesman, trying the word out. It sounded foreign, but also like there was more to it than just the word. Yes. He said that a person creates a zanpakuto from their own soul. Where he came from, it was a weapon used by the dead. Then how could the first paragons create their own zanpakuto if they were alive? That was a contradiction if he ever heard one. I asked him the same thing. He said that a zanpakuto can be created from a living person's soul, but they would have to anchor it. The creator would have to use their own blood to help create it. But they had to be careful. Too little, and the zanpakuto wouldn't be created. Too much, and the person would die. It was a risky process, and the swordsman only did it with 5 people, 4 of which were the first paragons. Who was the 5th? He doubted he would know the 5th person. He barely knew who the first paragons were. Someone he taught long before the first paragons came to him. The spirit chuckled as he remembered the man. He was an interesting man. He was stubborn, short-tempered, strong-willed, and always scowling. And yet to those who were his friends, he would have protected them to the end. He could have made a life for himself here. You mean he didn't? Saka asked him. It sure sounded like the swordsman had made a life here, if everything he had heard was anything to go by. He was not of this world and kept trying to find a way back to his own. When I found out that he was truly dying, he told me that with his death he could probably go back to where he belonged. Did he? I haven't seen him in the spirit world, and it's been a long time since he died, he said. It almost looked like he shrugged his shoulders. Saka walked towards the coffin and looked at the inscriptions. Do you know what these means? He asked the spirit as it floated behind him. Sifu shook his head. He never tried to teach his language and writing to anyone. He reached out and touched the first inscription, feeling the carved figures beneath his fingers. When they brushed up against the larger blade, he felt a brief pain in his head and drew back his hand. After the pain had passed, he looked at the inscriptions again. This time, for unknown reasons, he could read them. The first one said, "Here sleeps a man who fought against the one who wanted to sit on Kami's throne, who fought against those who wished to use his powers for themselves and who fought against the ones who wished vengeance on those he cherished. Here sleeps a man who protected his friends' lives at the cost of his own, who went up against almost unbeatable odds to save a friend twice and succeeded, and risked his own life so that the ones he guarded could live in peace. Here sleeps the one who protects." Saka took his eyes off the first inscription and looked at the second inscription. "Abandon your fear. Don't give an inch. Advance and never stop. If you retreat, you will age. Be afraid and you'll die." He looked away from the inscriptions and saw that he was alone in the tomb. Sifu had disappeared. "Perhaps it's best if I leave now." He walked towards the door and then stopped. He turned back to face the tomb and gave the warrior salute his father taught him to the coffin. He walked through the door and closed it behind him. He walked out of the cave and back into the forest, where Akela waited for him. The wolf rose from where he laid and walked over to Saka and woofed once. The tribesman interpreted it as "You took your sweet time. Akela, you wouldn't have believed what I told about what happened in that cave," he told the wolf. "Let's get back to the others. I can almost guarantee that they'll be asleep." Akela gave him a look that seemed to say, "What do you mean, almost?" He just smiled and walked back into the forest. The wolf followed him. When Azula and her friends had arrived with the mayor at the governor's mansion, they were surprised at how simplistic it looked. While Mai's family lived in a confiscated mansion back in Omashu, theirs were more elaborate, to signify their heritage. Governor Shun's mansion, on the other hand, did not match the same elaborate decorations as any other home owned by any Fire Nation noble family. Rather, it looked dreary, almost foreboding. Upon arriving at the dining table, the governor saluted Azula, prompting her and her group to do the same. A few minutes later, Naruto appeared by himself, without the guards who brought him back here. Azula could not help but feel intimidated by Governor Shun's presence. To her, it felt like she was staring at a long-lost relative of her father, with his cold stare and emotionless facial expression. At the same time, Governor Shun was also unusual in that he kept no beard or goatee. The most important feature that Azula noticed in the governor was his choice of a weapon. Instead of the usual Jien, Governor Shun preferred the Liudeo as his weapon of choice. "Good evening, Princess Azula. I assumed that you and your group had arrived safely in Kozan yesterday," Governor Shun spoke first. When Azula simply nodded, the governor did the same. "Sorry for the incomplete state of the bridge. Recently, the Earthbenders have tried to destroy it, but our troops barely managed to hold them off. When I received word from Colonel Monk about the advancing Earth Kingdom army, I understood why they did not come right away. Lord Naruto thought of an idea as to how to cripple their fighting ability." Azula did not scowl, to anyone's surprise. She kept a calm posture throughout the conversation as the servants began to deliver their meals to them. "Hearing about Lord Naruto's exploits on the battlefield, I can understand why your father, the Fire Lord, chose him to be your bodyguard. However, most of the officers complain about him a lot." Governor Shun looked at Naruto. "Like why you aren't promoted to an officer's rank in the first place?" Naruto sighed. "I'm already a bodyguard to Azula, and a paragon to boot. It doesn't matter. A paragon is technically an officer in all but name, but I would prefer to see you command troops as an actual officer. You've made too many enemies within our nation," Governor Shun reprimanded him. "My father has made it clear that unless Lord Naruto here," Azula turns to Naruto, who winced, starts obeying his commands and gives him the respect he deserves, he will not be granted an officer's rank. Having someone who does not have a rank act as my bodyguard could be beneficial to my father, as he can simply reassign him elsewhere, without fear of repercussions." Naruto glared back at Azula. "As I said in Omashu, the day I start to respect your father is when he starts to actually get off his butt and fight on the battlefield." Before Azula could protest, Naruto held up his hand. "Even former General Iroh himself, Prince Zuko, and yourself are out fighting the war and hunting the Avatar at the same time. I'm starting to understand why you have a low opinion on your own liege lord, Lord Naruto. Governor Shun passed him a kettle full of tea, which he poured into their cups. All the same, at the very least, for the princess's sake, try to show some respect to her father and your liege lord. Naruto sighed in resignation. Fine, I will. He said here just to keep the peace. That's better. In any case, how goes the bridge? Governor Shun turned to the visitor who arrived at the dining table. Inari bent the knee to the governor, as a sign of respect. The bridge is complete, my lord, Inari told Governor Shun. I simply did my job, nothing more and nothing less. Governor Shun nodded in approval. He gave Naruto a silent gesture for him to leave. As the blonde left, Azula got up and followed, but not before excusing herself to meet him in a small room. You don't look happy at all, Azula commented dryly. As if you've realized that to become an officer, you just have to give my father some respect. Azula, I only did that just so I wouldn't have the likes of that idiot Lieutenant Bakken you Dao get upset at me. Besides, there is a reason why Colonel Monk isn't here right now. He looked at the assortment of weapons inside the room. To his astonishment, there was a small crossbow that hung over the wall, while another bow, this time like the ones used by the Yen archers, also hung at a different area of the wall. Just as Naruto and Azula were about to leave the small room, Governor Shun entered. Governor Shun, I did not know you were a connoisseur for such exotic weapons, he said respectfully. These weapons were like the ones taken from the Earth Kingdom soldiers, the governor replied. However, the repeating crossbows like the ones I've kept from my collection have been kept by various former Earth Kingdom soldiers who defected to the Fire Nation. He walked over and touched the weapon briefly. They mainly use them to help keep the peace between the colonies and help us gather intel. He pulled his hand back and faced Naruto. So, I take it that you have a plan to defeat the incoming Earth Kingdom army? I do, but right now, I can only share this with you and Princess Azula. Azula nodded and allowed Naruto to continue. Colonel Monk has mentioned that Colonel Shinu will also take part in the upcoming battle with the Yen archers, and I have full confidence in his ability to lead them. It will still not be enough. There are approximately 9,000 Earth Kingdom soldiers bearing down on us, and we only have a third of its strength, Governor Shun insisted. The governor is right, Naruto. How can you pull this off? Azula asked. Well, this is where my plan comes in. And with that, Naruto began to explain the details of the plan. So, how did a boy like yourself become a bridge builder? Mai asked Inari. They continued to eat their dinner, while Ty Lee moved beside him. You're a bit younger than us, to be honest. Yeah, what gives? Ty Lee interjected. Inari chuckled. Well, I've always been an apprentice carpenter. The truth is, my grandfather and I built our first bridge back in our world. Back then, I whined and cried about the injustice of this world, until someone told me that you need to summon enough courage to change it, instead of waiting for someone to save you. Wow, that is quite an epic tale. Ty Lee smiled at Inari, although he got annoyed when she started to squeeze his cheeks. Hey! Cut it out! Mai glanced over. Yeah, listen to the little bridge builder here, Ty Lee, and let him go. Ty Lee pouted as she reluctantly stopped. Anyways, who told you to stop with the waterworks and just start changing for the better? Inari grimaced and pointed at Naruto, coming back to the tabale with Azula and Governor Shun. Naruto? Hold on a sec, how did you know him in the first place? What's going on? Naruto asked before turning to Inari and gave a warm smile. Hey! I didn't expect to see you here, Inari. Likewise, Naruto. Just why didn't you tell me that you were banished from Konoha in the first place? We would have welcomed you back in the land of waves. Inari shouted at Naruto. Governor Shun was surprised. You know Lord Naruto? Yes, I knew him. Inari glared at Naruto. And he did not tell me what the hell is he doing here in the first place. Enough. Enough of this excitement for today. Azula told Inari sternly. I will ask Naruto another time about his connection to the people who are accompanying the Avatar, especially ones with the same headband as the ones we saw today. She froze, realizing her bodyguard was still in the room. Is it the ones from Tuzin? Or the one from Omashu? Naruto growled. But Governor Shun simply placed his hand on the blonde's back. Let us focus on defending this colony, and then worry about your hidden past after that. Governor Shun led them back to the dining table and resumed eating. Inari, isn't it? Inari turned to the governor. Yes, my lord. You've done Kozan a great service. We shall open the bridge tomorrow if you will allow it, Governor Shun suggested. He also turned to Azula and smiled. I would suggest that you and your group, plus Lord Naruto, spend the night here. Tomorrow, we will test the new bridge for its endurance. And this is not a suggestion. Of course, Governor Shun. I still have a lot to talk about with you regarding strategies, Naruto agreed. The next morning, Azula and her group stood in front of the tank train, with Inari accompanying them. A few hours before sunrise, Governor Shun gave Naruto a secret order to leave the town, intending for him to join with either Colonel Monk's rough rhinos or Colonel Shina's yen archers. Azula noticed his absence at the dining table during breakfast, indicating that a part of his plan had kicked off. Actually, there is one thing I would ask of both you and Master Inari, Azula said to them, while supervising the loading of the tank train. What is it, Your Highness? Governor Shun asked her. Since the bridge is done, we should leave right now. While she had enjoyed her brief vacation in Kozan, she had wasted enough time. She needed to get back on the trail. Inari looked at Azula. Are you taking that tank train with you? She nodded. All right then, it'll give us the chance to judge how the bridge handles that kind of weight. Then it's settled. I will have the engineers move the tank train to the bridge and we will meet you there. She walked out with Tai Li and Mai right behind her. Azula? Asked Tai Li. How are we going to get Naruto across the bridge if he's not with us? That was looking to be a problem, at least to the acrobat. I'm sure he'll figure out that we're leaving, and he'll find a way across without anyone noticing him, she lied with the utmost confidence. Not even Mai and Tai Li were told of Naruto's plan, since he was paranoid enough to keep the details of it closer to just himself, the governor, and Azula herself. The tank train was lined up at the end of the bridge when Azula and her two friends arrived. They saw Konoha-Maru, Moegi, and Udan, but noticed that someone else was absent. Where's your teacher? Mai asked them. Konoha-Maru shrugged. I think he ate something this morning that didn't agree with him. He's been in bed since. That's too bad, Tai Li said. While she didn't really know the man, it never hurt to be polite. Alright, here's what's going to happen, Inari spoke up, getting everyone's attention. We have earthbenders on standby should any damage happen to the bridge. We're first going to send the tank train over the bridge to see what happens. He waved to the engineers in the tank train. It started moving and was soon crossing the bridge. It cleared and kept going on its way to the campsite that had been set up the day before. It seems that the bridge can hold the tank train's weight, and since right now, that's the heaviest thing we have on the bridge, I'd say it will be able to hold its own, Inari stated as he walked towards the middle of the bridge. You're the expert here, Inari, Konoha-Maru told him as they followed him. The earthbenders on the other side of the gorge quickly crossed the bridge and made their way back into the colony, nodding briefly at Inari as they passed. Wasn't it a clear day a few minutes ago? Mai asked aloud, looking around. They all looked around and saw what she was talking about. A few minutes ago, the day was nice and clear. But now, a fog was rapidly coming in. Within a few minutes, the fog had covered the entire bridge. What's going on? Moegi asked as she and Udan pulled out a kunai and Konoha-Maru reached for his staff. As if to answer her question, two shapes appeared on the other end of the bridge, slowly getting bigger and coming towards them. Inari realized something at that point. He had seen something like this before. He had seen it in the land of waves. This isn't a fog. This is the Kirigakure no Jutsu, hiding in mist technique. He told them in a half-panicked voice. Laughter was heard coming from the shapes in the mist. Well, what do you know? The little bridge builder knows what the mist is. You don't see that every day, do you, Itachi? One of the shapes said. The shapes stepped out of the mist and to where the group could see them. One was a black-haired man and the other was a blue-skinned man with a cloth-covered sword. They both wore headbands. The black-haired man wore the same one as Konoha-Maru and his teammates, while the blue-skinned one wore a headband that had the same symbol, the mask in Inari's room. The difference in their headbands was that the symbol was slashed through. But what truly made them distinguishable were the cloaks they wore had red clouds on them. It was the cloaks that made them instantly recognizable to the Konoha team. They're from the Akatsuki, Udan exclaimed. Let's see what we have here, the blue-skinned man, who looked more like a shark, truth be told, said. We've got the princess of the Fire Nation, her two friends, the little bridge builder, and 3 brats from Konoha. Why are you here? Konoha-Maru demanded, desperately trying to make sure his voice didn't squeak. He knew who Itachi was and was scared. But he couldn't run away. He had to stand his ground. Ah, look, Itachi. The little brat is trying to act all grown up, the shark-looking one said with a laugh, like it was an amusing thing to see. Isn't that cute? Kisame enough, Itachi said. He walked forward a few steps. Princess Azula, we do not wish to fight you. We came here for one thing, he said to her, sounding incredibly formal. And what would that be? She asked. She had a feeling that this was not a person she could trust. Naruto Uzumaki. Konoha-Maru and his teammates were shocked by what they had just heard, but Inari was not surprised, having met the blonde the night before. Before he could do something, Azula had slipped into a fire-bending stance, ready to fight. Sorry, but I'm afraid you can't have him, she told him. Mai began to finger a handful of throwing knives and Tai Li was ready to move. If you do not give him up willingly, we will kill you to get to him, Itachi replied coolly. His face didn't show any emotion. It was expressionless. You'll find that we won't go down that easily. She was confident that she and her friends could hold their own against the two of them. Are you sure? He took a step back. Kisame, don't kill them. We still don't know where Naruto is, he ordered. The swordsman just grinned before charging at them all. He went after Azula first, ducking underneath a fireball she had bent at him and burying his fist into her stomach. As she collapsed to the ground, Tai Li had flipped into the air, trying to jab the pressure points in his head and shoulders. He sidestepped her, grabbed one of her legs and slammed her down into the bridge. Mai threw knives at him, but he just swatted them away with his sword and then smacked her down with it. Swinging his sword low, he literally swept the Konoha team and Inari off their feet. And that was without a single use of jutsu, he boasted as the mist faded. Now then, what body part should Samahata cut off? He pretended to give it some thought. How about a leg? That why it'll be easier to catch you if you run away. He swung Samahata down at Azula's leg, as if to cut it off. But that idea didn't work. Kisame was surprised at the loud clang, and backed up as to everyone's surprise. Governor Shun pointed his Ryudeo at the two Akatsuki members. Who are you two, and what do you want? Governor Shun asked. Itachi walked towards him. As we told the princess there, he pointed at Azula without looking at her, we want Naruto Uzumaki. I get that, but I won't negotiate with bounty hunters like you. Governor Shun charged at Kisame, weapon in hand. Itachi stepped in and stopped his strike with his kunai. I do not know your intention with Lord Naruto, but you two will not get to him. Itachi merely kicked the governor aside. We have no choice. We have to eliminate you, the princess, her friends, and the Konoha team sent to accompany the bridge builder. Just then, Kisame turned around and grabbed Itachi by the back. Hey, Itachi! Kisame, now is not the time, Itachi reprimanded him. Kisame simply dragged his partner and forced him to see what is happening. Once he did, he paid attention. Governor Shun stood up and gasped as a large column of Earth Kingdom soldiers marched towards the bridge. So, they're here? He turned to Azula and gave her a silent nod, indicating that the next step of Naruto's plan was set in motion. He walked towards the approaching Earth Kingdom soldiers, completely ignoring the supposed bounty hunters. Look up there! Tai Li shouted as she pointed her finger at what appeared to be a sky bison flying towards them. Wow, it seems that the Avatar is joining in as well. Azula laughed loudly, as Mai and Tai Li were startled. Isn't this exciting? The Avatar's appearance and these two freaks, in Kozan on the same day. Appa landed near the bridge, his passengers waiting for now. Colonel Ching stood in front of his army, leading them onto the bridge. Both Saka and Akela stood just a little way behind him, their faces hard and somber. He stopped where the others could easily see him. Governor Shun sheathed his blade and turned his attention to the commanding Earth Kingdom officer. I am Colonel Ching of the Earth Kingdom, and I demand the complete and unconditional surrender of Kozan. He stated outright, his voice echoing over the gorge. I am Shun, the governor of Kozan, and general as well. What makes you rockheads think we will just surrender this colony to you? Governor Shun asked coldly. Your troops are tired from building this bridge. I could easily overrun this colony. He seemed completely confident about that. Perhaps. Let's put that to the test, if you may. Governor Shun mocked his Earth Kingdom counterpart. He did not expect the next command that came out of Colonel Ching's mouth. Bring forth the prisoners. He ordered his second-in-command. The 4 prisoners, 2 men and their sons, one pair was Fire Nation and the other was Earth Kingdom, judging by their clothes, were brought forward and were forced to kneel before him. "What is he doing?" Aang asked as he watched the whole thing. This wasn't supposed to happen. The prisoners were to stay behind until the colony had surrendered. They weren't supposed to be brought up front like this. When he looked at the others, he saw that they were just as confused as he was. Ching walked behind the fathers. "Fire Nation citizens of Kozan, you have profited from lands and resources that were never yours in the first place." He shouted for the colony to hear. "Earth Kingdom citizens, I find you guilty of treason by allowing these charcoal suckers to live here." He drew out a knife and held it high. "This will be your punishment." And without any more warning, he stabbed the first father through the back of the head, shocking everyone, except for his soldiers, the Akatsuki members, and the Shinobi team on the Sky Bison, who could see it. As the colonel pulled his knife out of the first father and walked over to the second father, Katara looked over to where her brother stood. "Saka, stop him!" she shouted at him, her voice full of horror. But he didn't do anything. He just watched as Ching killed the second father. It was when the colonel started to walk towards the children that Aang finally acted. He leapt off Appa and flew down, landing behind Saka. He bent the air to push the colonel away from the children. The colonel fell to the ground, and as he rose back up, Aang bent another stream of air to send the children over to the other side of the bridge. A side effect of that was Saka and Akela were also sent that way. As soon as the children landed in front of her, Azula got them on their feet and passed them over to Konoha-Maru's team. "Get them inside and find their mothers," she ordered. Konoha-Maru nodded in acknowledgement and began to herd the kids back into the colony with his teammates and Inari. "What is the meaning of this, Colonel?" Aang asked Ching, standing in front of the man. "You said that you would try to convince the colonists to leave. There was supposed to be no bloodshed. It was supposed to be peaceful. They are Fire Nation. They don't belong here in the Earth Kingdom," the colonel said as he stood up, his voice becoming angry. "But what about the Earth Kingdom people who live here? Surely, the man wasn't going to kill his own countrymen. He wouldn't do something like that. They are traitors!" he screamed, his calm composure, which he had kept ever since they had met him, breaking. "They deserve to die for letting Fire Nation filth live instead of doing their patriotic duty and kill them all." His eyes burned with a fire that Saka, and much later, everyone except for Team Guy, would say was insane. Aang turned to the soldiers. "Why haven't you arrested him?" he demanded. They should have done that the second Ching started talking like that. But they hadn't moved a muscle. "Because Colonel Ching is right," one of the soldiers yelled out. "They are all traitors." He looked at them and realized that they all had the same kind of fire in their eyes as the colonel had. They would follow his orders and destroy the colony. "Please, Colonel," he begged. "You don't have to do this. Traitors and enemies to the Earth Kingdom are to be executed. If you're not going to help us, Avatar, then get out of our way," Ching ordered him. Azula smirked at what was happening. She could not believe what she is seeing. The Avatar and his so-called ally are having an argument over how the colony would be dealt with, while the tribesmen that Naruto often talked about wore a neutral expression, as if he expected something like this to happen. Suddenly, Naruto appeared atop an ostrich horse on Kozan's side of the gorge. The ostrich horse raced across the bridge, stopping in front of Governor Shun and Colonel Ching. Naruto climbed down, clapped his hands mockingly at the air nomad. "Congratulations, Avatar Aang," he said. "You have successfully brought an enemy force to a Fire Nation colony with the intention to raze it to the ground. You are taking an active part in the war." Aang winced at the implication. Meanwhile, Appa landed briefly, letting Katara and Toph to join him. While this was all happening, Itachi and Kisame had joined them. "Look at the little fish cake, all grown up," Kisame commented, and pointed Samahata at Naruto's head. "I suppose we should thank you for saving us the trip. Come with us now." Naruto glanced their way. "How do you guys feel about a truce for now and help me with a massacre?" He made no effort to keep his voice quiet. Both sides of the bridge could hear him. "Ha! You think you can slaughter my men, with the puny number of troops that you have in the colony?" Colonel Ching taunted. He paid him no attention, focusing instead on Itachi. "Itachi, hasn't he killed you yet?" "Naruto, come with us," Itachi replied, not answering his question. "No. Then we will have to take you by force." "No, you won't," the blonde said, mystifying them. "Not unless you want to miss the massacre." Azula had had enough. She crossed the bridge, grabbed her bodyguard by his arm, and pulled him to the side. This isn't part of the plan we talked about, she hissed. Of course it's not. I'm just as surprised as you are, but those two could prove to be useful, Naruto whispered to her, before turning back to Itachi. How about it? We call a truce, and you two can have fun with those troops there. Governor Shun turned to Colonel Ching and scoffed. Looks like you rockheads have lowered down to the same level as some of my colleagues when it comes to coercion. There was no mistaking the disgust when he said colleagues. Very well then. We will show you no quarter. His side withdrew, moving quickly back to the colony. Colonel Ching watched them go. I will enjoy this battle, charcoal sucker, he said, all but spitting out the words before turning to his troops. Saka and Katara watched with fear as the two armies are about to clash. Great going, Saka! Katara shouted down, glaring at her brother. You led us into a battle instead of a peaceful withdrawal. He did not say anything back, feeling unhappy with the sudden turn of events. At the same time, he was not surprised to see the outcome of the failed negotiations, but the appearance of Naruto had changed everything. Both the Fire Nation and Earth Kingdom soldiers aimed their arrows in the sky, and released it, while the Earthbenders bent a column to protect themselves from the barrage of arrows. Meanwhile, the Firebenders bent enough fire to burn down the enemy arrows. A few Fire Nation soldiers were struck by the barrage. Colonel Ching was pleased with the progress that his army was making, confident in his victory over the Fire Nation, while thinking of ways to deal with the colony as soon as his army conquered it. First things first, though. They needed to soften up the defenses. Once he was certain they were softened, he signaled one of his subordinates. The man pulled out a horn and blew 2 blasts. His men started advancing across the bridge, right into Kosan. This was it. They would overwhelm the meager defenses and take the colony. Once the enemy army was on the bridge, Naruto signaled Azula. She bent out 3 small fire bursts into the sky. A few minutes later, a small explosion went off in the distance. One of the Earth Kingdom soldiers gasped as boulders had cut off their only path of retreat. Naruto signaled Azula again. She bent only 1 fire burst. Suddenly, 5 Komodo rhinos appeared, bypassing the boulders and charged towards the Earth Kingdom soldiers, hacking their way through. The colony's defenses gave a cheer when they realized who were riding the rhinos. Aang also recognized the newcomers. He wasn't filled with joy, rather shock. It's those guys from the Chen village! He shouted at everyone. He took off in his glider and flew towards the battle. He tried bending some air at Colonel Monk but was nearly hit by Vatcher's flaming arrow. Saka, on the other hand, was busy dealing with Kachi as Katara and Toph worked together to avoid Ogdi's bolos. What are they doing here? Less questions and more fighting, Aang! Saka commanded as he barely deflected the Guan Dao's blade. He turned around and saw an incoming Fire Nation pikeman. He reacted instantly, bashed his club into the pikeman's head. It was 1 hit, and the soldier went down. Blood had spurted from his head, staining Sokka's shirt. Colonel Ching watched in fearful recognition at the sight of Colonel Monk's men. Of all the units of the Fire Nation, why did they have to send the damned rough rhinos to deal with us? He asked. That was annoying. Colonel Ching. One of the Earthbenders approached him as he pointed at the Fire Nation soldiers. The enemy is exhausted. Excellent. Colonel Ching looked at the boulders blocking their escape route. He then turned to the other Earthbenders and raised his hand. Benders, clear the boulders. Non-benders, turtle formation. Shields up, spears out. The Earthbenders ran towards the rubble and bent it out of the way, with one of their rocks narrowly missing Yelu in the process. Colonel Monk saw what has happened and gave 2 fire bursts, indicating the rough rhinos to retreat. Colonel Ching was torn between taking the colony and taking out the nearest threat. In the end, he opted to stay with half of his army, while the other half followed the rough rhinos. The colonel may be smart to not chase after us, but I could not say the same regarding some of his soldiers. Colonel Monk remarked as their chasers quickly caught up. He gave enough of a fight to get some room and then he gave out 2 long fire bursts. Okay, boys, let's ride. They pulled out of the fight easily and raced away. The Earth Kingdom soldiers again chased after them. Which what the Fire Nation wanted. The rough rhinos swerved around the road, allowing their chasers to see a different company. Loose! Colonel Shiner commanded in a loud voice. The Yuan archers fired upon the enemy. It wasn't even a challenge for them. As the Earth Kingdom soldiers died, the last thing more than a few of them saw was how bored their enemies looked. Once they were clear of the archers, the rough rhinos turned around and joined at the rear. Colonel Monk rode up to the front, just in time to see Colonel Shinu kill an Earth Kingdom junior officer with a shot in the throat. "Looks like I made it," he remarked as he lowered his bow. "Thank Lord Naruto for this ingenious plan," Colonel Monk commented. "Where is he anyways?" The rest of the riders joined them. It was Vatcher who answered, fighting the leader of this Earth Kingdom force alongside the governor. The ex-archer kept his eyes forward, doing his best not to look at his fellow comrades. Colonel Shinu gritted his teeth in frustration. "Damn it! General Shun doesn't know what he's dealing with." "Governor Shun," Kachi commented. "He's barely surviving the fight right now. We saw a bunch of bounty hunters with cloaks standing in front of the colony. I'm not sure what they want, but whatever it isn't good." Monk watched as the remnants pulled together and fled back to Kozan. Calling them 20 men would have been generous. "Shall we pursue them again?" Shinu asked. "No need, Colonel Shinu. Those rockheads are stuck between us and the colony, and unless they wish to surrender, which they would not obviously do, they will fight to the death," he responded. The bridge was still in easy sight. He saw Naruto and Azula fend off an incoming attack with her fire-bending and the blonde's close combat skills. To his surprise, the two cloaked figures also decided to join in the slaughter. Back at the gates of Kozan, Naruto took care as more enemy infantry began to converge on them. While the Kirigakure no Jutsu still covered the battlefield, it made his life a bit easier by wading through the clumsy attacks from the non-benders, before stabbing 6 enemy troops with his Jin. He could hear Azula fighting nearby, and it sounded like Tai Li and Mai were close by. He was able to see the Akatsuki, unfortunately. Kisame slammed Samahata into a column of earthbenders while Itachi used the Gukyaku no Jutsu to burn the non-benders. Any enemy that went up against them were handled with ease. Naruto moved away from them, heading to the other sounds of fighting. He found Azula quickly enough through the mist. "Azula!" he shouted. "What?" she replied, still fighting. "Try launching a medium fire burst into the sky, and keep the pressure going." Mai and Tai Li gasped in surprise. "Are you nuts? Azula's going to be struck by the enemy before then," Tai Li told him. She crippled another earthbender with her chi blocking. Mai finished him off with a knife through his throat. Naruto gritted his teeth in frustration and gave multiple fist pumps, rather insistently. He turned to Colonel Monk and gave the same multiple fist pumps, indicating that he should do the same as well. Reluctantly, both Azula and Colonel Monk bent a large amount of fire into the sky and kept the burst for 10 minutes. Meanwhile, Itachi and Kisame started to tire themselves out as well. "We did not come here just to die. Let us cut our losses and retreat," Kisame said. He was starting to feel a little drained. Itachi shook his head. "Whatever Naruto is planning, we should wait and see." Kisame noticed the sky darkening. He realized what Naruto's plan was: cause a sudden warmth in the atmosphere. The warm moisture would then help create a thundercloud. Personally, he thought it was a little odd and desperate. What, does the fish cake think lightning will strike these guys dead? He wondered. Meanwhile, Azula noticed several small raindrops falling. She realized what Naruto's improvised plan was all about. Of course, my lightning might be enhanced by the energy in the sky, she thought. At the same time, is Naruto insane? I do not know how much lightning I can redirect, or if he is aware that I can't redirect lightning at all. The thundercloud started to rumble as lightning flashed overhead. Then Azula realized what Naruto's goal was, involving her ability to bend lightning. Flashback, it will still not be enough. There are approximately 9,000 Earth Kingdom soldiers bearing down on us, and we only have a third of its strength, Governor Shun insisted. The governor is right, Naruto. How can you pull this off? Azula asked. Well, this is where my plan comes in. And with that, Naruto began to explain the details of the plan. The Earth Kingdom's troops are expected to converge on Kozan, but there is only one road towards it. The rough rhinos will block off their escape route, forcing the enemy to hunker down close to the city gates. Naruto moved a piece representing the Earth Kingdom's army into a map that Governor Shun had on his small desk. At some point, the Earthbenders will try to force their way out. Azula and Governor Shun nodded in agreement, but the former frowned at the same time. How will you deal with the Earthbenders once they make their escape? The Earth Kingdom's troops will then try to chase the rough rhinos, who will retreat, but while they are retreating, that is when another player comes in. He moved a piece representing the Fire Nation. End flashback. Azula and Naruto watched as more lightning flashed into the ground before bending her own lightning and launching it at the sky. 3 minutes later, thunderbolts crashed down to the ground as small puddles began to form. At the same time, Colonel Chen grinned at the apparent tactical blunder Naruto made, which in his mind only weakened the firebenders' firepower with the rain. Azula's ability to bend lightning was surprising, but he was sure it could be handled. When the lightning in the sky flashed down once again, Naruto used his own fingertips to grab the lightning, before redirecting it at Colonel Chen, although he encountered some difficulties in attempting to redirect it. The sensation of it coursing through his body was surprising. Quite frankly, it hurts. Naruto gritted his teeth as he struggled to handle the lightning before remembering his close observation what Iroh told Zuko. Redirecting raw energy, such as lightning, require finesse and a sense of adaptability. Improper methods of redirection can be fatal. He let the lightning pass down his arm, through his stomach, and up his other arm, which, albeit a little shakily, was pointed right at Colonel Chen. It struck him in the chest, knocking him down. He didn't get back up. However, Naruto grabbed on his arm and dropped to one knee. Azula, Mai, and Ty Lee rushed to shield him. But when they saw their colonel struck dead, the Earth Kingdom wavered, then ran. Kisame and Itachi approached him, trying to take advantage of his condition. Azula bent another batch of lightning and struck the ground close to them. "I thought you two wanted to cause a massacre, not steal my bodyguard," she snarled. Kisame grinned. "Forgot about that, but our primary mission still stands." He turned around, flassaing through hand seals. Doton, Dochisenko. Both Azula's and Aang's group were stunned at what happened next. The ground liquefied before their eyes, and Kisame and the Samahata sunk below it. Toph bent the earth to stop him, but to no avail, making her eyes widen. Next, Kisame created a pitfall trap, catching the retreating soldiers by surprise as he re-emerged from underground and formed another hand seal. Suetun, Dai Baku Sui Shoha. A large amount of water engulfed the ground, adding another layer of trap to the frightened Earth Kingdom soldiers as the giant body of water became a prison. He grinned as he formed another set of hand seals. Suetun, Samiadori no Jutsu. As they watched the Earth Kingdom soldiers struggle to break free from the water prison, both Katara and Aang were horrified. They had thought that it wouldn't be like this. The colonel was supposed to try to peacefully take Kozan. But he instead ordered its death, and now that the colonel was killed, his army was receiving the same treatment. They wanted to look away, or in Toph's case, shut them out, but they couldn't, as the Earth Kingdom soldiers eventually died from drowning as a result of their failed attempt to free themselves. The two Akatsuki didn't even try to kill them. They just stood there, watching. The Fire Nation soldiers, seeing the battle was done, began pulling back into the colony. Once Naruto was sure they were all inside, he signaled Azula that it was time to go, to which she nodded. Getting across might be tricky with Itachi and Kisame there, but he was hoping they'd be busy. They barely took one step across the bridge when a cry of "Wait!" stopped them. Konoha-Maru and his team was back. "Boss, is that really you?" Konoha-Maru asked, hope in his voice as he stared at the blonde's back. Naruto stared to the end of the bridge in silence. "Will you turn to face them?" the Kyuubi asked. "This is one meeting I didn't want to have, Kyuubi," he told the fox. But he did turn around to face the three who once looked up to him. It was a long second where no one said anything in the ring. "You three have grown," he finally said. The last time he had seen them, they were practically shrimps. The three of them had tears in their eyes at those words. "It's really you, boss," Moegi happily said. "Where have you been?" demanded Konoha-Maru. The Konoha 11 had been searching for him for the past 3 years and had no luck. Now, he just showed up out of nowhere. "Why did you leave?" Udan asked, not bothering to wait for him to answer the first question. He hesitated, unsure of what to say to them. He couldn't act like he would have with the other Konoha teams. They didn't deserve that treatment. "For my own reasons," he finally told them. Will you come back?" Moegi asked. She sounded hopeful, which hurt him more than any kind of weapon they could have thrown at him. It hurt to see and hear them hope that he would come back. He shook his head. "No." "But you're a Konoha shinobi," Konoha-Maru told him. "Not anymore." He grabbed his staff and launched himself at Naruto. The blonde met him halfway and blocked his strike, grabbing hold of the staff. He was trying to hold it in, but the tears flowed freely down his face. "Please come home, boss," he begged. He wanted the blonde to come back. He wanted things to go back to the old days. Naruto had a face of calm indifference, even though he knew what the young Sarutobi was thinking. "It's not my home anymore," he said with no emotion in his voice. The sadness in the Konoha shinobi turned to anger. "If you're not going to come willingly, then I'll make you come home," he shouted, yanking his staff out of the blonde's grip. "Then try if you can." Naruto took a step back and moved into an airbending stance. Konoha-Maru replied with a barrage of staff strikes which he evaded or parried with his hands. "He's skilled with the staff," he noted. "I wondered if he has signed a contract with the monkeys yet. If he did, he would certainly be the Sandame's grandson." Deciding that using his staff wasn't enough, Konoha-Maru decided to use his grandfather's taijutsu, the Suruken, monkey fist, with his staff. But still, Naruto evaded, dodged, and blocked the strikes. "Fight back!" Konoha-Maru yelled at him. "Fight back, Kami, take it!" He knew that the blonde was holding back on him. He wanted him to fight back. Naruto caught the staff strike that was aimed for his head. "As you wish," he whispered. He forced the staff back and moved into a waterbending stance. Konoha-Maru swung the staff, which he caught and spun towards it, putting it across his back. He moved into an earth-bending stance and punched Konoha-Maru hard in the chest. As the young shinobi stumbled back, he moved into a fire-bending stance and kicked him back to his teammates. Konoha-Maru hit the bridge hard, but he was still conscious. "Listen, you three," Naruto told the three of them as they helped Konoha-Maru back onto his feet. "Things are different now. Konoha is not my home anymore. This is your only warning, don't come after me. If you try to take me back, I will respond with lethal force and I will kill you." He walked to where Azula, Mai and Tai Li were standing just at the end of the bridge. "We are leaving. Don't try to follow." They left the bridge and Kozan behind them. Naruto kept looking forward, not looking back to see Konoha-Maru, Moegi, and Udan crying on the bridge. But he could hear them. "I'm still annoyed that we had to leave after the killing spree," Kisame told his partner as they walked down a road. They left discreetly after finishing off the surviving Earth Kingdom soldiers who tried to surrender to them. "If we had stayed, he would have turned on us," Itachi told him. It would have been the opportune moment to do so. And judging by how the blonde fought, he was certain Naruto would have done. "And that's a bad thing?" Itachi said nothing. He noticed that something was trying to obscure his vision. Grabbing the thing, he pulled a piece of paper out of his headband. "What's that?" Kisame asked as he looked over Itachi's shoulder. "I knew you guys would leave early. Listen up. I'm giving you this one warning, don't try to track me. Leave me alone and go back the elemental countries. You try to take me and you leave here with only your heads." Naruto, when did he? Itachi began to wonder. Then he remembered one point in the massacre when both he and Naruto fought close to each other. "Impressive, Naruto, very impressive. You could have killed me, but instead you gave us a warning. Now can you back your words, or are you bluffing?" "Well, what do you want to do, Itachi?" Kisame asked his partner. "Perhaps it is best to contact our leader and let him know what has happened," he suggested. "Hey, he put the thing in your headband, it's your call." He usually didn't make the decisions between the two of them. He left that to his partner. "Then we shall make camp when it gets dark." They continued in silence. After flying the rest of the day away from Kozan, the Avatar's group set up camp on the edge of a forest as night fell. As they set up camp, Team Guy placed the same seal that Team Kurenai used in the swamp on the ground. Soon enough, the place was covered in smoke and all anyone could hear was a poof. After the smoke cleared, Team Kurenai and Team Asuma joined in setting up the camp. Soon, the camp had been set and dinner had been eaten. Once they had eaten, they learned two stories about Naruto. Kurenai told the first story. During one of his tours in the Earth Kingdom, Naruto and the division he was with were ordered to take the city of Tome. The city was a matriarchal city and was a place where warrior women were trained. The only place that was better for training women in the art of war than Tome was Kyoshi Island. When they arrived at the city, the commander of the division sent Naruto into the city to see if they were willing to negotiate surrender. He went into the city and didn't come back for the rest of the day. The next day, the commander and a few other soldiers could enter the city to discuss terms while also meeting up with Naruto again. When they talked terms with the young female leader of the city, one of the terms was that they kept Naruto. The commander refused the term, which led to insults which almost broke out into a fight. It was at that point when a drink of water was accidentally thrown at Naruto, splashing him, and making him almost soaking wet. The sight of a wet and surprised Naruto stunned the room for a few seconds and then turned the Earth Kingdom women, who had been towing the line ever since the blonde came into the city, became full-blown fangirls at that point, and tried to kidnap him at that point. The commander, Naruto, and the soldiers literally had to fight their way out of a city full of fangirls. After they had managed to get out of there, the city surrendered on the spot. It was a humorous story that made some of them found funny. But the second was not humorous, nor did any of them found it funny. Asuma told them this. During the same tour, Naruto and a regiment were ordered to take the city of Shirji. They arrived at the city and began to besiege it. Surprise occurred to both sides when the Fire Nation took a battering ram to the gate, and it swung open on the first try. Taking advantage of the surprise, the Fire Nation stormed the city and easily took control. When they wanted to discover why it was so easy to take the city, the daughter of the city leader came to them and explained it. She had imprisoned her own family, drugged the military leaders into unconsciousness, and had left the gate, all with the help of all but the two maids that refused to cooperate. She was asked why she had done all of this. She looked at Naruto and said that she and her maids had done it for him. They had done to prove their love for him, and that they were willing to share him with others if he would take them. His response was to free the family from their imprisonment, and then had the girl and her maids taken to the main square where everyone could see them. Standing beside them, he told the people of Shirji what they had done. And then, in front of everyone, both Fire Nation and Earth Kingdom, he executed them. The only people who were spared were the two maids who refused to take part, and the people approved of what he did. Once they were done, Team Guy quickly filled them on what had happened. They had agreed to tell the other teams about Itachi and Kisame later when the others had fallen asleep. That way, they could avoid unnecessary questions, as well as their failed attempt to capture Naruto when he suffered a minor injury on his right arm from a difficult attempt to handle electricity on the same arm. That massacre would not have happened had Saka kept his mouth shut, Katara told them after the story was done. The horror she had felt had disappeared. In its place was anger. My mouth shut? My mouth shut, Saka repeated, standing up from where he sat. Are you saying this entire thing was my fault? Yes, it is, she answered. It's your fault for letting those two boys' fathers die and killing every Earth Kingdom soldier there. It never would have happened if you didn't rile the colonel up. It would have happened anyway, he shouted at her. I'll admit that letting the fathers die is my fault. I'll admit that killing those soldiers is on me as well. But blaming me for this? If anything, the fault belongs with you and Aang. Me? Aang asked, surprised by the tribesman's words. I didn't do anything. He had tried to stop it. You brought the soldiers there because you were naive enough to believe the colonel, Saka told him, being blunt. But Katara takes most of the blame. And what exactly did I do that's made me get most of the blame? She asked with a tone of self-righteousness. She believed that she had done nothing wrong. Whenever I let you know that I didn't trust the guy, you ignored me, he told her. I knew that something was off when the colonel said he was going to convince the colonists to leave. Saka, I heard his heartbeat, Toph told him. He wasn't lying when he said that he was going to convince them. As far as she could tell, the man had been telling the truth the entire time. You heard his heartbeat, but you didn't hear what he thought, he said to the blind earthbender. If he were mentally replacing the word kill with the word convince, he'd have been able to get by you detecting him lying. I tried to tell you guys that, but every time I did, Katara blew me off like I was only playing around. You even told me to stop acting like a child. I said that because you were acting like one. This wasn't her fault. She had done nothing wrong. He got angrier at her words. I've stopped acting like a child the day Dad left, he said to her. I may have acted goofy, silly, or outright stupid when it came to some things, but the protection of the group always came first. I was suspicious of the colonel, and all you did was told me to stop being paranoid. You've been paranoid before, and every time he's been wrong. She could list the number of times he had been suspicious about someone, only to be proven wrong off the top of her head. It spoke for itself. I wasn't wrong about Jet, he reminded her. You just like to think you discovered that yourself. Face the facts, Katara. If you listened to me, the colony wouldn't have been put in danger and all those soldiers that I had to kill wouldn't be dead. He fell silent, and in the silence, he looked at his arms and hands. Saka, are you okay? Aang asked. As if to answer his question, the tribesman's arms began to shake badly. That face, he muttered. I can still see that pikeman's face. His blood, it's still on my hands. Must get it off. Have to stop seeing that face. He fell to his knees and threw up violently. He fell to the ground and his body began to shake like he was losing control of his body. Saka, what's the matter? Katara asked, concerned for her brother taking over her anger at him. Ino was the first to reach him. He's in shock. She informed everyone, her hands beginning to glow with green chakra. The rest of the night was spent trying to make sure Saka would be alright. Naruto stared at the fire while he knew the girls were staring his way. They had gone after the Avatar but had no idea where he had gone to. Moreover, the rough rhinos had decided to stay for a few days in Kozan, to rest and recuperate. So, they had stopped early and set up camp. But during the entire time, it just felt awkward between Naruto and the three girls. Perhaps it's time we went to bed, he suggested as they all sat in silence. He couldn't help but think about how the two Akatsuki members had shown up. He had played one hell of a bluff to scare them off and he wasn't even sure it had worked. Azula scowled at his words. We're not going anywhere until you answer some questions, she told her bodyguard. You didn't act surprised when the bridge builder and the Konoha team saw you. How long did you know about them? I found out they were here after you told me to stay away from Governor Shun's house and the bridge. I knew you wanted me to stay away from those places for a reason, so I went to the bridge to see what you wanted to keep secret from me, he explained, getting all the reasons out so this could end quickly. Is that all? No, that is not all. They had a lot more questions for him to answer. Why did Konoha-Maru sound like he knew you? Ty Lee asked. I knew him 3 years ago. He looked up to me once. He looked at them. Why are you asking me these questions? They had never been this pushy before. Because, Naruto, we have been encountering people who know you and today we met 2 men who wanted to capture you, Azula said. And all the while, we really don't a thing about your past. My past is exactly that, my pa, don't give us that. She yelled, cutting him off. For Agni's sake, Naruto, we just want to know at least one thing about your past. He was silent for a minute before speaking. You want to know about just one thing about my past? He asked them. They all nodded. Then I'll tell you one thing about my past. I'll tell you about one of the men you saw. I'll tell you about Itachi Uchiha. He looked over at Azula. I want you to imagine 2 things, Azula. First, I want you to imagine that the royal family is a family the size of a clan. Second, I want you to imagine Zuko as a prodigy. That's ridiculous, she objected. Why would, just do it, Azula, he ordered her. Imagine that Zuko is a prodigy in both firebending and swordsmanship, and that he has your father's favor. Imagine that you look up to him, and that he cares about you. I want you to imagine that your dream to beat him someday. Do you have that in your head? She nodded. Now I want you to imagine that you are coming home late one night from firebending practice. You come into the royal palace and see members of your family dead on the ground. Bodies are everywhere. You are scared and frightened because you see people you had known. You rush to your parents' room, because you know your mother and father are there and you'll feel safe. You burst into the room, but you find that your mother and father are already dead and that their killer is standing behind them. You are shocked to see that the killer is the person you thought cared about you and his family. The killer is no one other than your brother, Zuko. Now the question is, what would you do if he had left you alive? I would swear to track him down and kill him, Azula automatically answered. There was no question about it. She would hunt him to the ends of the planet, and end his life if he had done something like that. The silence that following was almost deafening. Itachi Uchiha is infamous where I come from because, in one night, he killed every single person of his own clan. He had left only one survivor, he told them. You mean his younger sister? Ty Lee asked with horror. Azula remembered what Naruto had said to Itachi on the bridge. No, not his younger sister, she said. His younger brother was the sole survivor, right? He simply nodded and looked away, breaking eye contact. This is just one of the reasons I don't tell you about my past, he said. Again, silence filled the air between all of them. He was silently grateful that the engineers always chose to eat and sleep inside the tank train. They didn't need to hear any of this. You're right, Naruto, Azula finally said, breaking the silence. We should go to bed. She got up and walked back to the tank train. Good night. Ty Lee and Mai soon followed her into the tank train, leaving Naruto alone with the dying fire. I shouldn't have told them, he muttered so they wouldn't hear him. I should have left it alone. You've made your choice, Kit, the QB told him. Now you will have to live with it. He stared at the embers in the fire. Tell me something that I don't know. Chapter 10, Restoration and Information. Location, Konoha. In the Hokage's office, Tsunade was looking over the latest report from the bending countries. She had just reached the point where the Earth Kingdom forces led by Colonel Chen had reached the bridge when shouts were coming from the hallway, shouts that were accompanied with the sounds of a small struggle. Wait, you can't go in there! Someone shouted before the office doors burst open. Tsunade put the report down and stared at the intruder with a calm expression. Is there something I can help you with, Jonin Uchiha? She asked the shinobi standing before her. Sasuke stood in the doorway with an angry look on his face. Why didn't you tell us? He demanded, his voice all but snarling. What didn't I tell you? Pulling out a kunai, he launched himself at the Hokage. He might have struck her had a pair of arms not grabbed him and pulled him back. Sasuke, for Kami's sake, calm down, Sakura told her teammate as she held him back. Don't try to be the calm one here, Sakura, he told her as he struggled out of her grip. You're just as mad as I am about this. She still wouldn't let him go. Her grip was like iron. Well, it doesn't exactly help us if you try to murder the Hokage, Sasuke, a silver-haired, face-masked shinobi said as he walked into the office. What is the meaning of this, Kakashi? Tsunade asked. Sakura managed to calm Sasuke down as the fourth member of the team, a very pale, which is putting it lightly, black-haired and black-eyed teenager boy, came in. Kakashi cleared his throat as they stood before her. Lady Hokage, he began. Why were we not informed about the mission regarding Naruto? The mission does not have Naruto as priority 1, she answered. It's protection detail. Anything that has to do with Naruto is a secondary objective. That still doesn't explain why you didn't tell us about the mission, Lady Tsunade, Sakura told her master, trying to stay respectful. But she was having a bit of difficulty with it. When news of Naruto surfaced, they were usually the first to know. I'm sure the Hokage will tell us if you let her talk ugly, the pale member told her with a fake smile. She turned on him with a fist raised and an angry look on her face. Don't start with me, Sai, she yelled at him. She would punch him through a wall if he kept up with that. Sakura, stand down, Tsunade barked out. She put her fist down but still gave Sai the angry look. As I said, the Hokage continued, the priority is the protection detail, and given your history with Naruto, you are not suited for this mission. Sasuke slammed his fist onto the table. Naruto is our teammate. We have the right to go after him more than any other team. She just looked at him in silence. While the rest of Konoha 11 put their efforts into looking for Naruto, it was Team 7 who put the most effort into it. When they were able, they did everything they could in looking for him. They went after the vaguest of rumors looking for their former teammate. But sometimes their drive got them into trouble. She had gotten multiple reports of them breaking into places they didn't have business in or assaulting people that spoke ill of Naruto. It is for that reason you are not on the mission, she told him. We both know that you would abandon the person you would protect in heartbeat if it gave you the chance to go after Naruto. Lady Hokage, with all due respect, Naruto is our teammate, Kakashi spoke. He would have continued, but she cut him off. Don't give me that excuse, Kakashi. You don't think I haven't read the reports about your team's hunts for Naruto? About how your team has illegally broken into places just because you've heard a vague rumor that he might be there? Or about how your team sent a person to a hospital's ICU because they insulted him? You have used that excuse one too many times. She gave them all a hard look. Until I am certain that you won't go chasing after rumors, you and your team are confined to the village. Now leave. Lady Tsunade, Sakura began to protest. Her teacher cut her off. I said leave. The four members bowed and turned to leave before Tsunade stopped them again. Wait, she spoke. Who was it that told you? Only Teams Kurenai Guy and Asuma knew about this mission. Konoha-Maru, Sakura finally said. They left the office after that. The sounds of their footsteps and walked past other people came in from the open door. Shizen! Yelled out Tsunade after a few minutes of silence. Get Team Ebisu in here now. Kami, take that woman. Sasuke swore as he and the rest of his team walked down one of Konoha's streets. The other people in the street could feel the tension and anger he was giving off and gave the team a wide berth. Watch it, Sasuke, Sakura warned her teammate. That woman is my teacher and your Hokage. While she was just as angry, she was still protective of her sensei. "You know, Sakura, you're making it sound like she was your only teacher," Kakashi told her with an eye smile. "I'm hurt." She knew that he was playing, but she smiled apologetically anyway. "And Sasuke, as much as I dislike it myself, the Hokage can find us for good reason," he said to his other student, his tone turning serious. Sasuke stopped and tried to rein in his anger. "I know," he said after a minute. "I just hate the fact that we're stuck here when we know where Naruto is, but we can't go after him." Sakura put a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Trust me, Sasuke. We all feel that way." "Well, I for one do not," Sai spoke up. "Why exactly should we care about someone who decided to up and abandon the village as well as this team? For all we know, he could have left to gain more power and turn on the village. It's incorrect for this team to worry about a traitor and possible danger." Whatever he was going to say next was interrupted when Sakura punched him hard, sending him flying down the street. As the people on the street scattered, a slightly dazed Sai was grabbed by the shirt and brought to look at Sakura's and Sasuke's angry faces. "Let's get one thing straight here, Sai. You are not a part of Team Kakashi. You are here only to ensure we can operate at full capacity. The fourth member of Team Kakashi is Naruto Uzumaki," Sakura told him. "The next time I hear you disrespecting Naruto like that, I'll hit you so hard your head will fly off." "Not if I kill him first," Sasuke said, his hand reaching for the Chikuto at his waist. Sai gave another fake smile. "I'll keep those words in mind, considering your Konoha no Sakura Ho-Oh, Konoha's cherry blossom phoenix," he told Sakura. "And you're the Kurijishi no Sharingan, Black Lion of the Sharingan," he told Sasuke. "That's enough," Kakashi barked out. "Sasuke, Sakura, let him go." They both did as they were told, letting him fall back down to the ground with the sound of him hitting the dirt echoing through an empty street. "Since we're confined to the village, I recommend we all calm down." He looked at Sai. "Go report back to Danzo. I'd advise you only rejoin us once everyone has calmed down." Sai simply got up, nodded and walked away. "I'm going to go train," Sasuke said. He started to walk in the direction of the training grounds. He wanted to hit something. "Need a sparring partner?" Sakura asked as she caught up with him. He gave a slight smile and nodded his head. They walked off together to blow off some steam. People started to fill up the street once they had realized that the danger was now over. The relief on their faces were obvious to all. Kakashi watched as his two students disappeared around a corner. They had changed from being an Avenger and a fangirl. It's still amazing to see them be like that nowadays, he thought to himself. But they aren't children anymore. He mentally sighed. I guess we can thank Naruto for that. After learning what had happened to Naruto during his life and the pain it caused him, Sasuke realized that he had lost a good friend because of what happened. The curse mark had influenced him too much. So, he went to Jiraiya and asked him to remove it. Knowing that Orochimaru's handiwork with seals was a little crude at best, and sloppy at worst, he was able to remove the curse mark without any trouble. But Sasuke knew that wasn't the only problem. He had figured out that it only amplified both his superiority and his inferiority complexes. Surprising the Civilian Council, the Shinobi Council, and Tsunade, he volunteered to take a leave of absence from the shinobi ranks to take therapy sessions. After sessions with Ino's father, Inoichi, the two complexes had diminished almost to the point where they were non-existent. Once the sessions were over, Sasuke rejoined the shinobi ranks and proceeded to put his nose to the grindstone. He tried to refrain himself from using the Sharingan as he trained under Kakashi, only using it when it was called for. But even then, he was greatly improving. He learned everything Kakashi had to teach him and asked Guy if he could help him with his taijutsu, which sent Guy off into a speech of how youthful Sasuke was. He even learned kenjutsu to diversify his skills. All of this helped him immensely in his missions. People in Konoha started to call him the second coming of Itachi. Surprisingly enough, he didn't hate the title, but neither was he proud of it. When it came time for the next Chunin exams, both he and Sakura went to Kumo to take it, with both making it to the third stage. When Kumo does the Chunin exams, by the third stage you are given a choice. A person can fight the opponent that's supposed to fight against them, or they can make a request to fight someone else. When Sasuke made it to the final round, he asked if he could fight someone else. Intrigued, the Raikage asked who it was he wanted to fight. He stunned the entire stadium by saying your brother, Killer B. Before the Raikage could even say no, his brother was already in the stadium fields. Sasuke asked that it would only be a taijutsu and kenjutsu match, wanting to see where he was weak. Once the match had begun, Sasuke soon had to use his Sharingan just to keep up the bee's movements and speed, but it still wasn't enough. After 10 minutes, the match ended in Killer Bee's favor, with the Uchiha thoroughly beat. When both the Raikage and Tsunade asked for his opinion about the fight, Bee simply said he lasted that long against the best. If it were me, I'd give him the vest. Sasuke was indeed given the rank of Chunin. His rise to Jonin rank came about a year later. Jiraiya had passed information about Orochimaru's location to the village. Tsunade created a group to take out her ex-teammate, and upon hearing about it, Sasuke volunteered for it. The plan was simple. They were to wait for night to fall, sneak into the base, and kill Orochimaru while also collecting information. Sasuke and Anko Mitarashi were delegated to information hunting while the others were to kill the Snake Sage. Despite both having a bone to pick with Orochimaru, neither of them complained about what they were assigned to do, they just accepted it. They broke into the base and separated. Both teams were to stay in contact with each other via wireless radio. Both Anko and Sasuke soon discovered that the base was a gold mine of information. They had even found the snake summoning scroll as well as information on current members of the Akatsuki. While they stashed the information they found away, they heard the sound of battle coming from the wireless. They quickly made their way to the sounds of battle. They soon found where the fight was being fought and discovered that the team that were sent to kill Orochimaru were now in the process of fighting and getting killed by him. Later they learned that one member of the group got cocky and announced their presence to the Snake Sage. Seeing the damage that was being done, Sasuke told Anko to help the others that were still alive fend off Orochimaru while he got the wounded out. Once that was accomplished, he had the others pull out as he set off the explosive notes that both he and Anko had put up both outside the base and inside as a precaution. He knew that it would take more than that to kill Orochimaru. He only used it as a distraction so that they could get away safely. Once they had arrived back at the village and reported in, the Shinobi Council decided to give Sasuke the rank of Jonin, while the new civilian council encouraged him to become the second Snake Sage. Surprised by their offers, he asked why he was given it when he had only been a Chunin for a year. Because they said so, and so do I. Get over it. Tsunade told him with abrupt gruffness. While he did thank her and the Shinobi Council for the promotion, he declined becoming the second Snake Sage. His reason was that he was never Orochimaru's student. Sakura had also changed over the years. After becoming Tsunade's apprentice, her nose was put to the grindstone as well. One might even say it was shoved into the grindstone. Whatever traces of being Sasuke's fangirl were left, Tsunade pretty much killed them. Sakura was put through a rigorous form of training, but in the end, it benefited her greatly. She now saw Sasuke as a friend and had even apologized for how she acted towards him when they were younger. Nowadays, she helped him run away and hide from his fangirls, except when he's in the hot springs or bathhouse, he was on his own there. She also became a Chunin at the same Chunin exams Sasuke did. Under Tsunade's tutelage, Sakura became proficient in medical ninjutsu. Some people claim that it was like she was resurrecting patients and giving them new life. Combined with the taijutsu lessons Tsunade gave her, her fiery temper, of which many a poor fool has been on the receiving end of, and her looks, earned her the title of Konoha no Sakura Ho, Konoha's cherry blossom phoenix. Sasuke received his nickname from a surprising place, his brother. One of the pieces of information that Orochimaru had was a supposed location of Naruto. Team Kakashi quickly made their way to said location. They split up to cover more ground and see if they could find anything. As Sasuke made his way through a building, he discovered that they weren't the only ones looking for Naruto. Flashback. Hello Sasuke, Itachi said as the two brothers faced each other in an abandoned warehouse. Get out of my way, Itachi, Sasuke told him. I don't have time to deal with you. He walked past him to get to the door on the other side, surprising his brother a little. Are you here for Naruto? The single question Itachi asked made the younger Uchiha stop in his tracks. So you are here for him. It seems we are looking for the same thing. Perhaps we should combine our efforts? The last question was laced with both irony and sarcasm. You stay away from him. He roared at his brother, whipping back around to face him, Sharingan blazing. You touch him, and I'll gut you. Itachi flinched and took a step back at the intensive glare his brother was giving him. But he recovered. So, you would rather fight me not for what I did, but for what I might do? He asked with quiet surprise in his voice. Killing you won't bring back our clan. But it will definitely stop you from finding Naruto, he growled as he slowly reached for a kunai. The silence between the two brothers filled the warehouse. Had it been any other situation, anybody who was in there as well would have felt awkward. Fighting to protect your friends rather than to avenge your family? Itachi was silent for a couple of seconds and then smiled. It seems that you have grown, Sasuke. You may still be foolish, but you are not the same foolish little brother I remember. How am I still foolish? He demanded. He felt like he had matured since that night, and even more so since the last time he has seen his brother. But to hear him say that he was still foolish made him feel like nothing had changed at all. Have you considered the possibility that Naruto doesn't want you to find him? He came after me, so I will do the same for him, he replied with confidence, remembering how Naruto chased after him when he had tried to leave. I was such an idiot, he mentally berated himself. And now, he was trying to make up for his idiocy. And what if he doesn't want to come back? Itachi asked, curious to see how his brother would answer. This was a new and different Sasuke he saw. He was wondering how much he changed. He'll come back, he said with determination. I know he will. His brother scoffed. Still foolish, he muttered. It seems you haven't changed as much as I had though. He began to walk away before stopping again in front of the rear door. I hear that the villagers call you my second coming. The villagers will say what they want. It does not matter to me. Shinobi who listened to how people talked about them usually got a swelled ego. He didn't want or need that. But one should always try to have a name they can call theirs. So I, Itachi Uchiha, hereby name you the Kurojishi no Sharingan, Black Lion of the Sharingan. Let the countries know you as such, he declared with both formality and authority before he continued walking out of the building. Sasuke just watched as his brother left. Thank you, Aniki, he whispered before leaving through the other door. Itachi may have his enemy nowadays, but he was still his brother. And he had always wanted Itachi to praise him. Giving him his own nickname was his own way of praising him. Itachi stood outside the building, his ears having caught what Sasuke had whispered. You're welcome, Otuto. He continued to walk away, trying to find Kisame so they could continue their own search for Naruto. And flashback, Naruto wasn't there of course, so all they could do was to go back to the village. But once what had happened between Sasuke and Itachi became public knowledge, people started to call him the Kurojishi no Sharingan. Kakashi sighed as he started to walk away. I just hope that guy, Asuma or Kurenai can bring him back. The little gaki is missed around here, he thought to himself as he disappeared into the crowds. Location Earth Kingdom. Alright, I'm off, Naruto told them as they stood outside the tank train, which it itself stood on the edges of a forest. It had been a week since the Battle of Kozan. The last time Naruto heard from Colonel Monk, he and the Rough Rhinos were given another mission from the Fire Lord. In addition, Governor Shun wrote the details of the battle in his report, and even succeeded in convincing the errant paragon of the Fire Nation to start giving his Fire Lord and Liege some proper respect, if he was to become an officer. It was early in the morning and they started moving yet. Mostly because Naruto had to leave due to an annual ritual that he had to do. Are you sure you can't hold this off? Ty Lee asked. She looked at her friend with concern shining in her eyes. He gave her a look. Ty Lee, if you ever meet this guy, you would do well to be punctual. Otherwise, you're likely to end up dead, he told her. Besides, you three need to get back to Yudao soon. War Minister Chen's time limit on loaning the tank train is almost up. Well, we'll see you around, Mai told him, acting like she was bored out of the world. But in her own way, she too was concerned for him. Goodbye to you too, Mai, he replied in a deadpan voice, although he knew she was concerned for him. He turned to Azula, who looked a little sad. He never did like leaving her. She may have had her two closest, if only, friends with her, and he knew that she could hold her own in a fight, but it still made him a little worried. But he knew that if he didn't try to keep this appointment, there was a very good chance of ending up as food. Don't worry your royal head, princess. I'll be back before you know it, he said with a cheerful voice that they both knew was a fake one. She lost the sad look, scoffing at her bodyguard. Who said I was worried? She asked, trying to sound like she had been offended. He grinned. You need to stop worrying, Kit, the QB told him. She's got Ty Lee and Mai. She'll be fine. You're right, he silently replied. Now don't go doing anything stupid, he told her, faint concern showing in the sentence. She heard it but fought to keep her face calm and not to show any other emotions. Did you forget who you're talking to? Right, sorry. He looked at Ty Lee and Mai. Make sure she doesn't do anything stupid, okay? He asked, this time with obvious humor instead of concern. They both nodded, making Ty Lee giggle and Mai chuckle, making Azula lose the fight to stay calm and became angry. Naruto, she began, but he was already gone. They could hear his laughter on the wind. I swear there are days when I hate him so much. Of course you do, Mai said, like she was stating the obvious. But both she and Ty Lee knew she was lying when she said things like that. Aang sat on the ground with a flute in hand. In front of him were several holes in the ground. What's out here? Saka asked. He wasn't seeing much. Toph knelt down and placed her hand on the ground, feeling the earth through her hand. A lot actually, there's hundreds of little, she started to say. Shh! Aang interrupted her. I know you can see underground, but don't ruin the surprise. Just watch. He blew a note on the flute and a groundhog appeared out of a nearby hole and repeated the same note. Yeah, he said while laughing. He blew a different note, and a different groundhog popped up and repeated the same note. I'm putting an orchestra together. Orchestra, huh? Asked Saka. Well, la-dee-da. 3 groundhogs popped out of their holes and repeated the same notes. Momo tried going after one of them but missed, his head popping up from another hole. Aang kept playing the flute and with the groundhogs until Saka plugged the other end of the flute with his finger. This is great and all, but don't we have more important things to worry about? He asked. We should be making plans. We did make plans, Toph reminded him. We're all picking mini vacations. They had been though a lot lately, so they decided to do something like to relax. There's no time for vacations, he told her with complete seriousness. They had made that decision while he had been sleeping. I'm learning the elements as fast as I can, Aang protested. I practice hard every day with Toph and Katara. I've been training my arrow off. Yeah, what's wrong with having a little fun in our downtime? Katara asked her brother. This side of the world has been in a war for the past century, Asuma told her from where he and his team stood off to the side. If you're a part of it, you don't have any downtime. Team Asuma had taken over protection duty after the Koan and its carnage. Everyone had agreed that it was time for a change in the guard. He's right, Saka said. But even if you do master all the elements, then what? It's not like we have a map of the Fire Nation. Should we just head west until we reach the Fire Lord's house? Knock, knock. Hello, Fire Lord, anybody home? I don't think so. We need some intelligence if we're going to win this war. He explained urgently. Aang blew a note, and a groundhog appeared under Sokka's legs. It would have repeated the note had it not seen Akela and had thoughts of food. It just went back down the hole. Alright, we'll finish our vacations and then we'll look for Sokka's intelligence, Katara said with a slight mocking tone on the word intelligence, making Aang chuckle. Both Shikamaru and Asuma looked at the two with slight disapproval. They both knew that trying to find intelligence could be the key to turning the fight into their favor. After he was done, Aang grabbed the map and opened it up. Your turn, Katara, he said. Where would you like to go on your mini-vacation? She looked at the map. How about the Misty Palms Oasis? That sounds refreshing, she suggested, pointing to its location. It looked interesting on the map, so she was interested to see what it looked like in real life. Oh yeah, I've been there. It's a pristine natural ice spring. And I don't usually use the word pristine. It's one of the nature's wonders, he explained to her. Well, let's go already, Saka told them impatiently. The sooner we're done with these mini-vacations, the sooner we can get back to the more important things. He walked back towards Appa, climbing aboard. What's wrong with him? Aang asked Katara. I don't know, he's been like that ever since Koan, she answered honestly. Since taking part in the battle outside Koan, Saka had been acting a little more serious. He still made sarcastic comments and made jokes, but they knew that something inside of him had changed. It's his way of coping with the fact that he killed someone for the first time, Asuma answered them, walking up to them while everyone else was getting back on Appa. Coping? Aang asked. Yes, coping. You guys are coping in different ways. You, Katara, and Toph are coping by delaying getting back to what you're supposed to do. He's coping by wanting to get the war over with, so he's hurrying you all along, he explained, having seen people go through this kind of thing before. Will he be alright? Katara asked. Despite what had happened between them, Saka was still her brother. She would worry about him, even when he got paranoid about something and turned out to be wrong. Just give him some time. That's all you can do at this point, he told them before walked away towards his team and leaving them to think over his words. Everyone got on Appa and flew in the direction of the Misty Palms Oasis. However, once they got there, it was not what they were expecting. Must have changed ownership since I was here, Aang told the group, chuckling nervously before they walked in. The ice spring shown on the map was big, but in real life, it looked like a small, steaming clump of ice. The fact they saw a dog licking it didn't help either. They walked to what looked like a cantina when a clothes-covered man hawked one at Sokka's feet. But before he could do anything, Katara grabbed him and pulled him into the cantina. They entered the cantina and saw it was just a watering hole, with people both drinking and sleeping. Their attention was drawn to the bar, where the bartender was creating a drink with fruits and handing out said drink using nothing but his swords. "I'm getting one," Choji stated, looking intently at the bar. "You had lunch an hour ago," Ino told her teammate. "It's hot out there, Ino. I'm thirsty." "I don't see a problem having one of those fruity beverages while we plan our strategy," Saka agreed. The two of them went over to the bartender to order drinks. As that happened, Aang accidentally ran into a person who had a drink, thus spilling it all over his clothes. "No worries," Aang assured the man. "I clean up easy." He bent the air around him to dry his clothes. The man gasped in surprise. "You're a living relic," he said with excitement. "Thanks," the airbender replied. "I try." "An air nomad, right in front of me," the man mused to himself. Then he realized that said air nomad wasn't alone. "I'm Professor Zay, head of anthropology at Ba Sing Se University," he introduced himself before grabbing Aang's arm. "Tell me, which of the air temples do you hail from?" "The Southern Temple," he answered. "Oh, splendid!" exclaimed the professor as he measured the boy's head. "Tell me, what was the primary agricultural product of your people?" Are fruit pies an agricultural product?" the air nomad asked back, feeling like he was in a test. He had only been a kid before he ran away. He didn't really know anything about agricultural products. But the professor was pleased nonetheless. "So, truly fascinating. That is one for the journal," he said to himself before pulling out said journal and writing an entry. "So, Professor," Saka began as he and the others joined the two with drinks in hand. "You're obviously a well-traveled guy. Do you have a more current map? Ours seem to be a little dated." "Certainly," Zay agreed. He rolled out his map on a table for Saka to look at. "What, no Fire Nation?" he asked after looking at it, and seeing that it was of the local area. "Doesn't anyone have a good map of that place?" Honestly, it was beginning to look like it was impossible to find such a map. Ignoring her brother, Katara looked at the map herself. "You've made a lot of trips into the desert." "All in vain, I'm afraid," Zay told her. "I've found lost civilizations all over the Earth Kingdom, but I haven't found the crown jewel, Wan Shi Tong's library." "You've spent years walking through the desert to find some guy's library?" Toph asked in disbelief from the chair she sat in. "This library is more valuable than gold, little lady. It is said to contain a vast collection of knowledge. And knowledge is priceless." Sounds like good times," she replied, sarcasm evident in her voice. "Oh, it is," he said, ignoring the sarcasm. "According to legend, it was built by the great knowledge spirit, Wan Shi Tong, with the help of his foxy knowledge seekers." "Just for clarification," Shikamaru asked, "when you say foxy knowledge seekers, do you actually mean that they're foxes or they're attractive women? It's best to find these things out early, so they could avoid a misunderstanding later." "Personally, I hope it is attractive women," Sokka said. "Or they could just look like foxes," Katara told her brother, admonishing him. "You're both right, handsome little creatures," Zay said before pulling out a scroll with a building design of the library on it, and placing it on the table, over the map. Wan Shi Tong and his knowledge seekers collected books from all over the world and put them on display for mankind to read, so that we might better ourselves. If this place has books from all over the world, do you think they've got info on the Fire Nation? A map, maybe?" Sokka asked, hope evident in his voice. "I wouldn't know. But if such a thing exists, it's in Wan Shi Tong's library." "Okay then." He looked at everyone else. "Then my vacation time will be spent at the library. If you have any complaints, I don't want to hear them," he told them, keeping it short and to the point. "It's troublesome, but it's also the first useful vacation we've had since you guys decided to go on a break," Shikamaru said, throwing a look at Aang and Katara. They weren't quite sure if he was insulting them or not. Hey, what about me?" asked Toph. "When do I get to pick?" "You gotta work here a little longer before you can qualify for vacation time," Saka told her. She just slammed the drink in her hands onto the table, showing them that she was annoyed by his words. "Of course, there's the matter of finding it," Zay admitted. "I've made several trips into the Siwang Desert, and almost died each time. I'm afraid that desert impossible to cross," he noted with a disappointed tone. Saka and Aang shared a look and had the same idea. "Professor, would you like to see our sky bison?" Saka asked him. "You actually have a sky bison?" Zay asked them, both surprised and joyful. Before anyone could answer, they all heard loud barking coming from outside the cantina. "That's Akela!" the tribesman exclaimed, running out of the cantina. Everyone else followed quickly on his tail. They ran out of the cantina and outside the oasis's walls, where they had left the animals. Akela stood in front of Appa, growling and barking at a group of cloth-covered people. Appa was growling as well. "Sandbenders, shoo! Away from the bison and the wolf!" ordered Zay as the group reached them. They did as they were told, boarding their sand sailor and sailing away into the desert. Naruto entered the place via the usual way. "Honestly," he muttered, walking down the side of the wall, "the least he can do is let me know where the back door is. That way I don't have to do this every time." Is he still a little miffed about the fact I found the airbending scrolls and read them without his permission? He knew he shouldn't have read them, but it was too good a chance to pass up at the time. He was lucky enough not to end as food. He landed on solid ground and looked around. "Where is he?" he asked aloud before shrugging his shoulders. "Whatever, I'm just here to do what I promised to do." He walked away, already knowing where to go. "So, how much do you want to bet that you're going to find one of his traps this trip?" the QB asked from within. "Are you kidding?" he asked back. "That's not a bet, that's a guarantee." Appa flew on into the desert with the heat of the desert sun above them. The professor sat on his head along with Aang. "Tell me, Sky Bison, are you the last of your breed?" Zay asked him. He only grunted in response. "Oh, delightful, I only wish I spoke his tongue. Oh, the stories this beast could tell." Momo hopped over to where he sat and began chattering. "Shush, chatty monkey," he told the lemur. Aang looked at the scroll with the building design. "Wow, shouldn't be too hard to find a place like this out here," he said confidently. They should be able to see it from a distance if it was as big as the scroll told them. But they flew on, seeing nothing. "Does this place even exist?" Toph groaned after feeling the heat of the sun for a good amount of time. "Some say it doesn't," Zay told her cheerfully. "Shouldn't you have mentioned that before?" she asked him grumpily. They kept flying on. All was silent until Toph shouted out, "There it is!" She pointed out to the desert. Everyone looked at where she was pointing and saw nothing. They all looked at her. "That's what it will sound like when one of you spots it," she told them before waving her hand in front of her face with a mocking smile on her face. "So, Professor Zay," Choji said, trying to kill time by asking the man some questions. "What is it exactly that you want to look for in the library?" "I just want to find it, and read what it has to offer. But if I wanted to actually find something..." Zay drifted off into thought. "I guess I would try to find what Professor Uzumaki was looking for." That got Team Asuma's attention right away. "What did you say the professor's name was?" Asuma asked. He wanted to be sure he had heard right. "Professor Uzumaki, he was the previous head of anthropology," the professor repeated. "Why do you ask?" "The Uzumaki clan was destroyed during the last Shinobi World War. The survivors were scattered. We had never thought that one ended up here." Asuma looked at the professor, curiosity showing on his face. "Is he still alive?" "Unfortunately, I don't know," Zay told them. "He retired and then disappeared into the Siwang Desert, looking for the very library we are." He thought something over. "When was this last Shinobi World War?" he asked Asuma. "About 16 years ago." He frowned once he heard those words. "I don't think Professor Uzumaki came here because of his clan's destruction." "What makes you say that?" the Konoha shinobi asked him. "Because he was the head of the anthropology department for over 50 years, Zay told them. He retired 10 years ago. "Did you know him well?" Choji asked. It sounded like he did. "I was his student and helper," he answered with pride. "In fact, he often told me about his home country." "Why did he want to find the library?" Ino asked him, curious to know. The only Uzumaki she had known was Naruto, and she never remembered him as the scholarly type. The idea of an Uzumaki professor sounded almost alien to her. Professor Uzumaki was convinced that somehow the history of the bending countries and the history of the elemental countries were connected, he explained. He believed that the beginning of the Avatar also had something to do with the history of the Shinobi, to be specific, the person who started the Shinobi era. If I remember correctly, he called this particular person the Sage of the Six Paths. That's the guy who started the Shinobi era, all right. No one knows what his name was, Shikamaru said, lifting his head up from where he lay in the saddle. At least, that's according to the troublesome legends. He let his fall back down so he could look at the sky, hoping to see if there were any clouds. Professor Uzumaki hunted everywhere for evidence to support his hypothesis, but he could only find scraps of information, which led him to believe that the answers he was looking for were in Wan Shirtong's library. However, the university would not allow him to go look for it, so he retired. Why would he think the answers would be in the library? Saka asked him. According to the information he gathered, the library holds tomes and scrolls that speak of the era the first paragons lived in as well as the history dealing with the beginning of the Avatar. Saka looked down at the paragon medallion hanging from his neck. Are you sure? He asked the professor. He knew little of the paragon's past, so he was curious to know what had happened. I don't know. That's why I want to find the library. They flew on for a few more minutes. The heat kept beating down on them, making them start to sweat. It shouldn't be this hard to spot a giant, ornate building from the air, Katara said as she and Saka looked over the side of the saddle. Saka looked through his telescope to look through the desert and saw something. Down there, he called out, getting everyone's attention. What's that? He pointed down at the object. Aang landed Appa in front of what appeared to be a tower buried in the sand. Forget it, Katara said as she held the scroll of the library designs. It's obviously not what we're looking for. The building in this drawing is enormous. They all then saw something shine on nearby dune. On the top of said dune was a canine-like animal with a scroll in its mouth. What kind of animal is that? Saka asked as they watched it head towards the tower and then run up the tower wall before disappearing through a window. I think that was one of the knowledge seekers, Zay said in excitement. I don't know about that, but I know I saw a fox, Choji said. We must be close to the library, the professor announced with enthusiasm. Saka looked at the drawing. No, this is the library. Look! He pointed to the tower buried in the sand and then to the tower on the top of the building in the drawing. They were one and the same. It's completely buried. Realization dawned on Zay's face. The library is buried. My life's ambition is full of sand. He fell to the ground and then his attitude did a complete 180. Well, time to start excavating, he said cheerfully before grabbing a small trowel and digging up the sand. The others looked at him in disbelief. He was going to need more than a trowel to get through that much sand. Toph walked up to the tower wall and placed a hand on it, feeling the entire structure. Actually, that won't be necessary. The inside seems to be completely intact. And it's huge. The fox went through a window up there, Asuma said, pointing upwards at the window. I say we climb up there and give it a look, Saka suggested. Toph folded her arms. I say you guys go ahead without me, she told them. You got something against libraries? Katara asked her. I've held books before and I've got to tell you, they don't exactly do it for me. Oh right, sorry, she awkwardly replied, once again remembering that Toph was blind. Let me know if they have something you can listen to. That would be something interesting for her. Asuma had borrowed Sokka's boomerang and tied rope to it. He threw it at the window and made sure it wouldn't shake loose. He began to climb up with Zay and Katara behind him while his team brought up the rear. Aang and Sokka, however, were with Appa and Akela. Don't worry, buddy, Aang told his sky bison. I'm not making you go underground ever again. You can stay out here with Toph. That goes for you too, Akela, Sokka told the wolf. And remember, if Toph tries to do anything stupid, aim for the hair. Akela nodded in answer, ignoring Toph's protest. The two of them left, leaving a blind earthbending master with a sky bison and a white wolf. What's up? That was the first question she asked the two of them. Everyone else was climbing down the rope into the library. The sound of feet scraping against the stone tower echoed out into the desert. When they got past the insides of the tower, and felt the cool air wash over them, they saw the entire library. Oh, it's so breathtaking, Sei stated as they all hung onto the rope. The spirits spared no expense in designing this place. Look at those beautiful buttresses. The last sentence sent Saka, Katara, and Aang into fits of giggles. What's funny? The professor asked them. Nothing, Aang told him. We just like architecture. As do I, the professor said, missing the point. Whatever, will you people hurry it up? Ino said higher up on the rope. She didn't want to be hanging on the thing all day long. Soon enough, they all got off the rope and onto a bridge in the middle of the hallway. My word, began Zay. The exquisite mosaic handiwork of this tile-rendered avian symbol. He trailed off when he realized that everyone was giving him a weird look. Nice, owl, he finished off lamely. Suddenly hearing movement coming from behind them, everyone ran towards the end of the bridge and behind columns. The noise of movement got louder. Aang snuck a peek at who was making the noise and saw that it was a very big owl standing in the middle of the bridge looking at the rope. Its head then turned to look around the library and did an almost 360 turn to look at where they were hiding. I know you're back there, it said aloud. Its voice alone sent shivers down their spines, even the shinobi. Aang ducked his head back behind the column. Zay decided to be the brave one and walked back onto the bridge. Hello? I'm Professor Zay, head of anthropology at Ba Sing Se University. He introduced himself before bowing to the owl, trying to sound friendly. You should leave the way you came, unless you want to become a stuffed head of anthropology, the owl bluntly stated as he looked over at a column. Zay followed his gaze and stuffed animal heads on the column. He rubbed his neck unconsciously. The notion of having his head stuffed was not an appealing one. Everyone else emerged from where they were hiding. Are you the spirit who brought this library to the physical world? Saka asked cautiously. He got the feeling that this was a spirit much like Ko. You had to be incredibly careful and tread lightly. Indeed, the owl answered. I am Wan Tong, he who knows 10,000 things, and you are obviously humans, which, by the way, are no longer permitted in my study. His head kept swerving between Saka and Zay, who stood in the front of the group. What do you have against humans? Aang asked. He didn't see anything wrong with them. Then again, he was a human, so he was a little biased. Humans only bother learning things to get the edge on other humans. Like that firebender who came to this place a few years ago, looking to destroy his enemy. He leaned in closer to Saka. So, who are you trying to destroy? He asked, a subtle dangerous tone entering his voice. Saka thought quickly, trying to think up a convincing lie. Not to destroy, but to understand, he finally said. Please let him buy it, please. He silently prayed. The owl just stared at him. If you're going to lie to all-knowing spirit being, you should at least put some effort into it, he told the water paragon, the last bit with slight exasperation. I'm not lying, Saka protested. I'm here with the Avatar. He's the bridge between our worlds. He'll vouch for me. He grabbed Aang and put him in front of the owl. Yeah, I'll vouch, Aang told the spirit, a little uncertain. We will not abuse the knowledge in your library, good spirit. You have my word. He promised the owl, bowing his head with everyone else following his example. Very well, Wan Tong answered. I'll let you peruse my vast collection, on one condition. To prove your worth as scholars, you have to contribute some worthwhile knowledge. Sei stepped up to the bat first. He knelt and held out a book. Please accept this tome as a donation to your library, he said. First edition, very nice, the spirit said as he took the book with his wing. Sei back away and let Katara step up. I have an authentic waterbending scroll, she offered, showing said scroll. Oh, these illustrations are quite stylish. He took the scroll. Aang thought about what he was to give. Oh, I know. He reached into his shirt and pulled out the wanted poster of him. I suppose that counts. Asuma stepped forward. Wasn't really expecting this, but my father did teach me to be prepared. He reached into his vest and pulled out a book. Here you are, he offered the book to the owl. The History of the Land of Fire, that is acceptable. He took the book without any argument. Ino was next. I have a book on flower gardening, she offered. A bit unnecessary here in the desert, but interesting all the same. Perhaps some of the methods in your book will be useful when I tend to my garden. He took the book, leaving the others to wonder where he could hide a garden in a library that was underground. Choji moved forward. I have a book about the recipes my clan has created, he said, holding the book in his hands. A cookbook is knowledgeable, he agreed, taking the book out of the Akimichi's hands. Shikamaru walked forward. I think I've got the right thing here, he said. Useful Ways to Use Your Frying Pan in Your House and on Your Husband by Yoshino Nara. Wanshur Tong read the title of the book with a small amount of confusion in his voice. My mom wrote it for the wives of the Nara clan, troublesome woman, he muttered. It sold well, so there's no danger of me losing this thing. Sounds intriguing all the same, the owl told him before taking the book. Saka was the only one left. I don't really have anything to give you, Great Spirit. But can I offer you a deal? What is it you have to offer? He asked, sounding a little interested. When I am old and wish to write about my life, I will come back and give the original copy to you once it is done. That was the only thing he had to go with. He just hoped that it was accepted. The spirit stared at him with unblinking eyes. Very few have ever tried to make me an offer before, and I have rarely accepted, he stated. But I find the terms acceptable. I will expect your memoirs to be given to me when it's done. Enjoy the library, he told the entire group. Great Wanshur Tong, may I ask you something? Zay asked the owl, stepping 2 steps forward. What is it? He asked, vaguely annoyed. 10 years ago, my predecessor disappeared looking for your library, he began. Ah yes, there was a fellow who found my library around that time. He was close to death when he found it. Did he manage to find what he was looking for? He certainly hoped that was the case. Yes, although he took ill afterwards and died soon after. I had him buried in the basement, and had what he was looking for moved to a different part of the library. Is that all? Yes, thank you. He bowed his head in thanks. Suddenly the library shook, and they all heard a faint boom. Then they heard someone yelling. Damn it, Wanshur Tong! How many places do you have here that are flooded? How did they get flooded in the first place? You live in the middle of the desert. Also, why is it that you have so many areas that booby-trapped? Here I'm trying to do what I promised, and I keep getting almost killed in the process. I need to be paid for this, you hear me? I should get paid. The voice was somewhat faint, but they could still what the person was saying. If you'll excuse me, the owl said. I need to take care of this. He flew off the bridge and into the depths of the library, the sound of his wings flapping in the air echoing beneath them. Ino looked over the edge of the bridge. Do you think we should ask what that was all about? She asked the group. Shikamaru shook his head. It's too troublesome to do so, he told her. But something was bugging him. That loud voice sounded a little familiar. You know, there are days where I think your boss is an idiot, he told a nearby fox as he stared at the problem in front of them. It was a door that, if opened, would flood the room with water. Naruto had managed to close the door before the entire room went underwater, but there were still puddles on the floor and his pants were still soaked. And you also know that I would kill you for making such an insult, Wanshur Tong answered as he appeared in the room. Well, you can't kill me. I'm the one who's restoring your library in case you forgot. He looked back at the problem. Just how many traps do you have rigged in this library? This is the 5th one I've encountered on this trip alone. The owl thought it over. I believe that so far, you have only encountered 2.5% of the traps in my library, he answered with a shrug. Naruto just stared at the giant bird. You are one paranoid owl, you know that, right? I can and will defend my library by any means. The paranoid owl defended his choices and actions. He sighed, knowing that he wasn't going to get anywhere with that. Whatever. Just get rid of this trap so I can get on with my job. The spirit walked up to the door and just waved a wing over it. It is safe now, he announced before walking away. Why do I have a hard time believing him? He asked the fox, who just cocked its head and blinked. Why did I even bother asking you? He asked before he opened the door again. Thankfully, no water came flying out to hit him in the face. Well, on with the work. Toph sat in the sand with Appa and Akela. So, you like flying? Was the question she asked the sky bison after a period of silence. He just scratched his ear. Of course, I'm more comfortable on the ground, where I can see. She said. Well, I don't see the way you do. I feel the vibrations in the ground with my feet. She grabbed a handful of sand and let fall from her hand. But the sand is loose and shifty, it makes everything look fuzzy. Appa gave a big yawn and Akela gave her a look. Not that there anything wrong with fuzzy, she quickly told them. Everyone was looking through the bookshelves while a nearby fox put a book back into the shelf where it came from. Hey, look at these weird lion turtle things. Aang said, holding a picture of the creatures for everyone to look at. Saka looked at the picture. They were weird, but he wasn't surprised. I've seen weirder, he stated. He walked away, browsing through the many different books. Aang, Katara called out. Did you know in a past life you were left-handed? She asked as she walked over to him with a book in her hands. I always knew I was special, he replied with a big grin. Well, you are the Avatar after all, Shikamaru drawled. He was very special. Be nice, Shikamaru, Ino told her teammate. Saka kept walking around, looking at books and scrolls. If what they had interested him, he took it and put it in his bag. He then came upon a glass container that held a burnt piece of paper with writing on it. The darkest day in Fire Nation history, he read. It's got a date at the top, but it doesn't say anything else, he said to himself. Looking around to see if anyone was watching him, he pulled out his machete to pry open the glass and took the piece of paper out. Sheathing the machete and rolling up the piece of the paper, he began to walk away when the others showed up. Saka, where are you going? Aang asked him as he began to run off. Whenever the tribesmen started running, something was up. I want to know what to the Fire Nation on their darkest day, he told them, holding up the scroll. This could be promising. He ran through the library with the others right behind him, racing past aisle after aisle of ancient books. The information on the Fire Nation should be right up in here, he said as he came to a door with the symbol for fire above it. The door was close, and when he tried to open it, it wouldn't open. It's barred from the other side. There's a note right here, Katara said, pointing to a piece of paper on the wall next to the door. Asuma took it and read aloud to the group. To whom it may concern. Due to an idiot's notion that no one should know about his nation's weaknesses, he burned all the information on the Fire Nation. Therefore, this section of the library is closed for restoration. Thank you for understanding. Naruto, Paragon of the Fire Nation. P.S. If you're wondering how long it's going to take for it to be completely restored, I honestly don't know. Naruto's been here? Choji asked in surprise. It was beginning to look like everywhere they went, the blonde had been there too, even when they weren't looking for him. That's not important right now, Saka told him, staring at the barred door. I need to know what happened on the darkest day, he muttered to himself. It could be the key to turning the war in their favor. Hearing an animal whimper, they all turned around and saw one of the knowledge seekers standing on its hind legs. Hello, little weird fox guy. Saka greeted him uncertainly. The fox got back on all fours, turned around and pointed. Seems it's trying to assist you, Zay noted. Sure, he told the fox. I guess I'll follow you. The fox took off and led them through the library, their footsteps echoing in the air. It finally stopped at a large golden design on the wall. The fox went through a small hole next to the design and disappeared. The inner part of the design began to roll to the side, revealing that it was a door. On the other side of the door was the fox. They walked into the room, which looked like someone had painted a surrounding landscape on the walls as well as the sky. In the middle of the room stood a pedestal with 4 different sets of dials and a lever. The fox walked up to the lever and pushed on it. The sky turned into the night sky, showing all the stars as well as the path of the moon. This room is a true marvel. A mechanical wonder, stated Zay. It's a planetarium that shows the heavens moving. Cool! Choji exclaimed as he watched the thing work. He had never seen something like this before. This is beautiful, but how is it helpful? Saka asked as the night disappeared and the sky reappeared. Maybe these dials represent dates and times, Katara suggested as she looked at the pedestal. It looked like it to her. Saka, try entering that date from that parchment you took. Sure, Katara, he shushed her. Not in front of the fox, he's with the owl. The fox dropped its tail and ears, looking like he did something wrong. Looking at the date on the parchment, Saka approached the dials and set the date. When he was done, he went over to the lever and pushed on it. The room started up again, turning day into night. Wow, I gotta hand it to you, Saka. You picked the best mini vacation for sure, Aang told him. Night turned back into day, but then day immediately darkened. Hey wait, what happened to the sun? Katara asked. Aang scowled. Great, you must have broken it, he said. Have a little more trust, Aang, Asuma told him. It never hurt to have a little more trust in your friends. Saka looked at the planetarium. It's not broken, he said, realizing what it was showing them. The sun is behind the moon. It's a solar eclipse. It's literally the darkest day in Fire Nation history. He grabbed Aang by the shoulders. Now I get it. Something awful happened on that day. I don't know what, but I do know why. Firebenders lose their bending during a solar eclipse. He let go of Aang, who grunted in pain. Sorry. That makes sense, Katara agreed. I mean, think of what the lunar eclipse at the North Pole did to the waterbenders. This is huge. The fox walked up to Saka and stood on its hind legs in a begging position. Fine, you earned it, Saka acknowledged, taking a treat out of his bag and tossing to the fox. We've got to get this information to the Earth King in Ba Sing Se, he told everyone. We'll wait for the next eclipse. Then we'll invade the Fire Nation when they're totally helpless. The Fire Lord is going down. Before his mood could reach the others, a large shadow loomed over him. Mortals are so predictable, and such terrible liars, Wan Shi Tong said as he stood before them. You betrayed my trust. From the beginning, you intended to misuse this knowledge for evil purposes. You don't understand. Sokka protested. If anyone's evil, it's the Fire Nation. We need this information. They had to end the war. You think you're the first person to think their war was justified? The owl demanded in an angry voice. Countless others before you have come here, seeking weapons or weaknesses or battle strategies. We had no choice, Aang told him. Please, we're just desperate to protect the ones we love. And now, I'm going to protect what I love, the spirit stated. He started to flap his wings, creating large gusts of wind. The library began to rumble as his wings flapped. What are you doing? The air nomad asked, worry and panic seeping into his voice. I'm taking my knowledge back. No one will ever abuse it again, he declared as sand began to fall from the ceiling. He's sinking the building, Katara exclaimed, realizing what he was doing. We gotta get out of here. I'm afraid I can't allow that. The owl changed into an almost dragon-like figure. You already know too much. But before he could do anything to them, he was hit by what could be described as a brown, spiky boulder. Nikudan Hari Sasha, spiked human bullet tank, Choji called out as he sent Wan Shi Tong to the ground. The owl shook his head, trying to get out of his daze. Let's move, people! Asuma ordered the group. Everyone ran out of the planetarium with Wan Shi Tong on their heels. They kept focus on what was in front of them because, quite frankly, no one wanted to look back. Naruto felt the library start to rumble. Now what's going on? He grumbled. He looked up from where he was working and saw that all the foxes had disappeared. He then noticed that sand was falling from the ceiling and onto the floor. What's with the sand? He thought. The owl said that this place was airtight. So how is... His train of thought stopped as he realized what that meant. He isn't. He is, the Kyuubi said as he watched the sand come down. I'm going to kill that owl. The blonde yelled as he ran out of the room to look for Wan Shi Tong. The three of them sat together so that they could get some shade. Appa had put his tail against the tower, and when he felt it began to move down, he tried to warn Toph by growling at her. Akela also realized the danger and started barking. I already told you to. I don't want to snuggle, she told him as she sat on Appa's leg. When Appa rose up to walk away, she lost her support and fell to the ground. Getting back up, she faced the library's tower and felt the vibrations. Library sinking. Library sinking. She ran towards the tower and shoved her hands into it, trying to use her earthbending to stop it. However, she was impeded as the sand beneath her didn't give a good grip. Letting go of the tower, she bent the sand beneath her feet into rough form of earth. She took hold of the tower again to stop from sinking. They ran through the library, trying to escape the angry knowledge spirit that was chasing them. In the process of chasing, the owl broke many of the shelves, destroying many of the books. As they tried to get across the bridge, Zay turned to face their pursuer. Great knowledge spirit, I beg you, do not destroy your vast collection of priceless tomes, he said to Wan Shi Tong, who was having none of it. Seeing that he was about to attack, Aang bent the air to pull Zay back towards them, making him drop the books he had in his hands. He bent the air towards Wan Shi Tong, sending him off the bridge and into the depth of the library. We gotta get back to the surface, he told everyone as he led them away from the bridge. They had to get out of there if they wanted to live. Sokka stayed where he was and looked back across the bridge. Sokka, let's go, Katara called out to him. But we still don't know when the next eclipse is going to happen, he protested. Don't be stupid. We'll find out later, There's not going to be a later, Katara, Ino told her. If the library sank into the desert, they would not be able to find it again. And if they were stuck inside when it sank, they would not live long. She's right, the tribesmen agreed with her. If we leave this place, we'll never get the information. Aang, Shikamaru, come with me to the planetarium, I need cover. The two quickly walked over to him. Katara, get everyone out of here, he ordered. But she was interrupted when Wan Shirtong made his appearance again, smashing through the bookcases. Go! He yelled. Hurry, Saka! She told him as she ran off with the owl behind her. Saka, Aang, and Shikamaru ran back across the bridge. As he was being chased, Sei leapt into an aisle to avoid the owl and then noticed a book that piqued his interest. As Toph tried to hold the tower up, there was a noise coming in from behind them. Both Appa and Akela turned to face the noise. Akela took a sniff in the wind and began to growl. What is it now? Toph asked them. It turned out to be the sandbenders coming back for Appa. One of them bent a gust of sand at Appa, obscuring him. Who's there? Demanded Toph. The sand sailors began to encircle Appa. Akela joined his larger friend in the fray. The three of them ran back into the planetarium. Why are we doing this? Aang asked as they entered the room. Because if this calendar can tell us about eclipses in the past, then maybe it'll project when the next one will be, Saka explained as he approached the pedestal. You can't possibly check every single date, he objected. They didn't have the time for that. I don't have to. We just need to check every date before Sozin's comet arrives. Because after that, well, try not to think about that, the tribesman told him. You better start working then, Shikamaru said. We don't know when that owl is going to show up. For all they knew, he was right beyond the corner. Saka and Aang began to work while Shikamaru covered the door. It took some time, as each date they tried wasn't the right one. Both the sun and the moon kept missing each other or not even coming close to one another. Come on, Eclipse, Aang said as he pushed the lever on the latest date they tried. The planetarium started up and then soon darkened. That's it, the solar eclipse, Saka stated with glee as he looked at the moon covering the sun. It's just a few months away. He quickly wrote down the date. Got it, now let's get to Ba Sing Se. They ran out of the planetarium, trying to get back to the others before they became owl food. The sandbenders surrounded Appa and threw ropes with weights tied at the ends over him. They proceeded to try and pull him down, but he resisted. Akela tried to help by attacking the sandbenders and making them lose their grip on the rope, but he could only attack one at a time and they kept getting back up. Appa sent them flying by jerking around and flapping his tail. It sent a few sandbenders flying but not all of them. Toph heard the struggle. Don't make me put this down, she threatened. She let go of the tower and bent a stream of sand at them. But because she couldn't really see through the sand, her attack flew harmlessly by. Put a muzzle on him, someone ordered. A rope was thrown over Appa's mouth, but he snapped it off. Ropes were then thrown at his horns. He tried to fly away but the sandbenders threw ropes at his legs and pulled him down to the ground. A sand sailor pulled up next to them and they tied Appa to it. Akela was still attacking the sandbenders and going after the ropes that held Appa. Will somebody take care of that damn dog? Toph heard another voice called out. She heard flesh hitting flesh and Akela yelping. Stupid cur, just lay there and die, the first voice said as she heard a blade being drawn and cutting through flesh. The sand sailors flew off with Appa in tow. No! Toph cried. Stop sinking! She let go of the tower and bent streams of sand in random directions but the sandbenders were already gone and she still had to hold the library in place. I'm sorry, Appa, she said to herself but then realized something. Akela? Akela, are you there? She called out. She heard the pained whimperings of him getting closer, but she couldn't make sure where he was. She had to focus on holding the library up so the others could escape. Katara's group kept on running from Wan Shirtong. Split up, she ordered the others. They scattered, but the owl stayed on her. Making a quick turn, she disappeared from his sight and hid at the end of a bookshelf, holding Momo. She tried to stay quiet, but her panting sounded like it filled the entire library, at least to her. The knowledge spirit searched for her among the bookshelves. At least I'll have one specimen to add to my collection, he announced as he noticed Momo's tail hanging out from behind a bookshelf. He made a lunge for them, but they were already moving. He went after them, now taking more care to avoid the shelves. They made their way back to the bridge, joining up again with Asuma, Ino and Choji. They ran out to the bridge, but Wan Tong was right behind them. Katara stopped and turned to face him, assuming a waterbending stance. Your waterbending won't do you much good here, the owl told her as he loomed over her. I've studied northern water style, southern water style, even foggy swamp style. Suddenly, from above them, Aang flew over with Sokka hanging on. Sokka let go, fell towards Wan Tong and hit him hard with a book, knocking him unconscious. That's called Sokka style, he told the unconscious owl. Learn it. Aang and Shikamaru rejoined them. Everyone started to climb up the rope, but Sokka realized that not everyone was on the rope. He spotted the missing person over by a bookshelf. Wait! Professor, let's go! He called out, getting his attention. I'm not leaving! Zay answered as he sat on the ground, surrounded by books. I can't. I spent too long trying to find this place. There's not another collection of knowledge like this on Earth. I could spend an eternity in here. He looked content. It was at this point that Wan Tong woke back up. But before he could do anything, a loud voice called out. Hey! The voice yelled out, stopping everyone from moving. They all turned to see an angry Naruto standing on the other end of the bridge. What in the name of the Biju are you doing, you stupid owl? I thought I knew that voice sounded familiar. Shikamaru realized as he looked at the blonde. It was Naruto. I'm sinking my library, the spirit replied simply. Stop being an idiot, he yelled. We had a deal. I bring you books from the Fire Nation to restore your library, and you don't try to kill me or turn me into a meal. And the last time I checked, sinking the library while I'm still in it qualifies as killing me. I thought spirits stuck to the deals they made. Yes, that's true, he said, sounded offended at the mere idea. Sokka saw an opportunity at the owl's words. If you try to kill us or sink the library, that means you tried to back out of our deal first as well, he shouted down at him. Wan Tong huffed. A spirit always sticks to the deals they make, he said to them both. Then stop sinking the library, Naruto told him. And let us go as well, Sokka called out. The spirit almost seemed conflicted until he took a sigh of defeat and turned back into an owl. Very well, I will hold to the deals I've made. He flapped his wings again and the library stopped rumbling and the sand stopped pouring down from the ceiling. He looked at the people on the rope. It would be wise for you to leave now. They scurried up the rope when they heard the command. They soon hopped out the window and disappeared from. Wan Tong walked back into the library's depth. What about me? Asked Sei as he stood up from where he sat, looking unsure. Naruto walked over to him and stuck out a hand. Congratulations, he said. You've just became a resident of Wan Tong's library and his helper. That means whenever I'm in, you help me restore the library? Sei took the hand and shook it. I'm glad to be of assistance, he said with one of the biggest grins Naruto had ever seen. So long as you make yourself useful, I guess, he said as he walked away. Sei followed him, almost like a lost puppy. When the library stopped shaking, Toph finally let go of it. She stumbled to the ground. She heard the others land on the ground behind her. She just sat down and bowed her head. We got it, Sokka told his sister. There's a solar eclipse coming. They gave each other a hug. The Fire Nation is in trouble now. That is good news, Asuma agreed. We should notify the other teams and Lady Hokage as well. If they did that, she could send more shinobi to help aid in whatever plan Sokka was thinking of. All's well with the world right now, Shikamaru said drily. Aang looked around but couldn't see his sky bison. He walked over to Toph. Where's Appa? He asked. Toph simply shook her head. The action made tears well up in his eyes. One dropped down his cheek. That was when Sokka noticed something. Hey, where's Akela? He asked. He heard a whimper of pain coming from his left. Akela? He called as he turned and saw the wolf lying on his side in the sand, blood coming out of his stomach. He wasn't breathing either. Akela! He ran over to the wolf and picked him up, trying to stop the bleeding. Somebody do something! He yelled at them. Ino ran over. Don't worry, Sokka, she reassured him. I'm trained as a healer, and I've helped Kiba's clan heal their animals. Just hold him steady. Her hands glowed green and she placed them over the wound. It's not deep, he just lost some blood. She frowned. It looks someone kicked him in the side though. I think a few ribs might be cracked but I can fix them. Saka stared at Akela with worry and anger in his eyes. Whoever did this better hope they don't meet me, he growled. They would be in for a very painful lesson in manners. Everyone just stood there, as oncoming sandstorm approached them.